Chapter 862. Upon hearing the old man's voice, the expressions of the other 12 abyssals did not change. However, the leaders of the veteran factions and the top factions behind the 13 seats could not sit still. These leaders also felt that the rules of the civil and martial duels were too fucked up. However, the next moment, whoever stood up first and walked towards Wu Ming would be imprinted with a mark of courage because of the old man's words. The calm voice on the old man's cell phone said to the Moon Empress, you still haven't seen your disciple?" Upon hearing that, the Moon Empress rolled her eyes imperceptibly. When she heard that, the Moon Empress rolled her eyes imperceptibly. "What does it have to do with you whether this Empress disciple comes out or not?" In the Moon Empress' heart, Lin Yuan was not inferior to the others, but he was too young. Moreover, the Moon Empress did not intend to let Lin Yuan participate in these 3 duels. Just as the Moon Empress was about to answer, she suddenly froze. The Moon Empress realized that her precious disciple had actually made a move. Lin Yuan, who was in the crowd, took a deep breath and thought to himself. The rules of the civil and martial duels imperceptibly reflect the importance of a creation master's strength. In any case, he had to participate in the civil and martial duels. Not only for the sacred source life form, but also for the radiant light metal. When Lin Yuan had been preparing to participate in the Radiance 100 sequence selection, he had not been strong enough. At that time, Lin Yuan had just obtained a Silver Eye/Fantasy Eye Jasmine Lily. At that time, his master, the Moon Empress, had already mentioned the Radiance Envoy to him. When Lin Yuan had first heard of the Radiance Envoy, it had left a deep impression in his heart. As Lin Yuan's strength continued to increase, he could now pass the Radiance 100 sequence test with his eyes closed and become a member of the Radiance 100 sequence. Therefore, Lin Yuan's eyes were now fixed on the Radiance Envoy. The radiant light metal from the civil and martial duels was a very useful help for him on his path to becoming a Radiance Envoy. Lin Yuan nodded at Lu Jie, Long Tao, Gao Feng, Li Xian, Sun Ningxiang, and the others before walking directly behind Wu Ming. Apart from the people in Lin Yuan's small group who knew that Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple, they only knew that the chief guard's disciple was exceptionally protective of this youth. Upon seeing that Lin Yuan was going to participate in the civil and martial arena duels, the veteran factions and the top factions' younger generation members were astonished. Most of the people present had watched the all-star competition and knew of Lin Yuan's talent in combat. However, due to the rules of the civil and martial duel arenas that had just been announced, it could be said that the entire competition basically had nothing to do with combat ability. Unless he was able to place in the top 2 of the civil arena competition, there was no chance for him to display his combat strength. Moreover, the people present were not trash like Meng Su from the Barbarian Snake Guild Club. Aside from Gao Feng, who had gotten lucky, anyone else would have been able to defeat Meng Su within 3 moves. Therefore, he had always been favored by the younger generation of the top factions and veteran factions because of his talent and not his strength. Lin Yuan had just turned 18 after the new year. In addition, Lin Yuan looked rather young, so everyone felt that he was like a 16 or 17-year-old youth. Even if he had grasped the creation master's means in his mother's womb, his strength as a creation master couldn't possibly be that strong, right? Apart from talent, a creation master's accumulation of time was also indispensable. After all, not all creation masters were like the Moon Empress, who was already a 5-star creation master before the age of 40. When the challengers who were preparing to participate in the civil and martial arena duels saw Lin Yuan casually standing behind Zhong Zhe, they couldn't help but feel that this youth wasn't a genius like the Moon Empress. For a moment, they couldn't help but feel that this youth wasn't thinking that he would be able to get second place in the civil and martial arena duels just because no one had stepped up earlier. Don't even think about it. Therefore, many challengers also stepped forward and lined up behind Lin Yuan. The Moon Empress didn't expect Lin Yuan to have the courage to participate in the civil and martial arena duels. However, this was also good. On the one hand, Lin Yuan could compete with the other outstanding youths. On the other hand, as his master, she could also know Lin Yuan's strength. At that moment, the Bamboo Monarch, Chef Supreme, Night Leaning Moon, Iron Prison, and Cicada Cry couldn't help but look at the Moon Empress. These 5 people had seen Lin Yuan before. Among them, the Bamboo Monarch, Cicada Cry, and Iron Prison looked at the Moon Empress and then at Chef Supreme with a playful expression. They didn't expect the Moon Empress disciple to compete with Chef Supreme's disciple. They didn't know who was stronger. At that moment, there was an exclamation. Isn't that little Yuan? It was a woman's voice that sounded a little shrewish. Then, a man's voice echoed. Ying, it's really little Yuan. This kid actually went to participate in the civil and martial arena duels. After the Nix assembly ends, I can call little Yuan over to Kitchen Fragrance Palace to try my new red braised meat. Zhang Yingying and Li Zhonglin had been chatting with Wang Fuxiang and hadn't paid much attention to the martial arena duels. When they heard Zhongzheng's voice mention the civil and martial arena duels, they subconsciously looked forward. They didn't expect to see Lin Yuan. Upon hearing Li Zhonglin and Zhang Yingying's words, the veteran factions and the top factions management generation suddenly looked at Chef Supreme. It turned out that the youth who had amazed everyone at the All-Star competition was related to Chef Supreme, and it seemed like their relationship was very deep. From Li Zhonglin and Zhang Yingying's tone, they had directly treated this youth as their junior. Chef Supreme's eldest disciple, Li Zhonglin, had never given face to anyone, but now, he actually took the initiative to cook red braised meat for a youth. This was really big news. Although the veteran factions management generation behind the 13 seats didn't dare to be as surprised as Li Zhonglin and Zhang Yingying in front of the 13 majesties, they could still talk normally. There were even quite a number of top factions and veteran factions management generation that started a few bets while watching the martial arena duels, betting on how many consecutive wins Wuxia could win. At that moment, the management generation started to discuss Lin Yuan's identity softly. These discussions naturally entered the Moon Empress' ears, and she felt a nameless fire burning in her body. Lin Yuan is this Empress disciple. Chef Supreme's eldest disciple and daughter just happened to become this Empress disciple's neighbor when they eloped. You actually placed this Empress disciple on Chef Supreme's side, and you didn't even ask Chef Supreme if he dared to accept her. Standing behind the Moon Empress, Mystic Moon and Mystic Moon couldn't help but have cold sweat trickle down their foreheads. Based on their understanding of the Moon Empress, it was impossible for the Moon Empress to remain calm when it came to matters related to Lin Yuan. The second, end of this chapter. Chapter 863. At that moment, Thunderous Battle, who represented the 5 Emperors' mercenary group, spoke to Long Tu, who was standing beside him. Old Long, look at that young man. He's at most 17 or 18 years old. Let's make a bet on whether that young man can enter the top 10 of the civil and martial duels. Long Tu quickly glanced at the Moon Empress and cursed Thunderous Battle in his heart for being crazy. Thunderous Battle was the second in command among the 5 Emperor-class experts of the 5 Emperors' mercenary group. He was extremely strong in combat, but he was careless and lacked shrewdness. However, under normal circumstances, shrewd people would not dare to trick Thunderous Battle. Based on Thunderous Battle's question, Long Tu knew that Thunderous Battle had not paid attention to the rules of the civil and martial duels. The civil and martial duels were over once the top 3 contestants were confirmed. There was no such thing as the top 10. Do you think Thunderous Battle can rank the top 4 to 10? Moreover, there are only 11 people from the younger generation standing behind Zhou Ming. You're betting on whether the Moon Empress disciple can enter the top 10? Isn't that the same as betting on whether the Moon Empress disciple will rank last? Before Lantu could finish cursing Thunderous Battle in his heart, an imposing aura suddenly rose from a chair in front of him. The moment this aura rose, Long Tu, who was an emperor-class expert, felt as though his entire body was being pressed into the depths of the sea. He could not breathe at all. Thunderous Battle, who was beside Long Tu, felt as though he was an emperor-class expert. When he tried to circulate the spiritual power in his body, he felt that it was extremely obscure. After careful calculation, it was only about 1/10 of the usual speed. This shocked Thunderous Battle. It could be said that the might of this aura had exceeded Thunderous Battle's understanding. At that moment, a cold snort sounded in Thunderous Battle's ears. That snort might not have been loud, but Thunderous Battle felt that half of his ear had gone numb because of the sound of it. Do you like to gamble so much because you can take out a sacred source life form? If you want to gamble, let this Empress accompany you. Upon hearing this voice, Thunderous Battle immediately knew that the terrifying aura had come from the Moon Empress. Thunderous Battle grinned awkwardly. He did not know how he had offended the Moon Empress. He had come to the Imperial City with a mission. He was going to head up to the Leaning Moon Mountain to seek the Moon Empress' help. Furthermore, he wanted to see if he could exchange for a few golden lotus brocade stalks from the Moon Empress. The 5 Emperors' mercenary group's creation master resources were already scarce. If they could obtain a few golden lotus brocade plants, it would allow the 5 Emperors' mercenary group to have more creation master resources. However, for some unknown reason, he had offended the Moon Empress. Even though he was an Emperor-level expert, Thunderous Battle did not dare to put on airs. He quickly bowed and spoke respectfully. I'm not betting anymore. Moon Empress, I, Thunderous Battle, am not betting anymore. Once he finished speaking, he added another sentence. Actually, I don't usually gamble. Another cold snort shook Thunderous Battle's other ear until it was numb. Then, the Moon Empress retracted her terrifying aura. The Moon Empress' sudden rage silenced the entire Night Emperor Palace. Night Leaning Moon also turned her head around to cast a glance at Thunderous Battle. She felt that Thunderous Battle was practically the boss of the desert. Originally, he wanted to find 2 spicy strips to eat, but he accidentally entered the crater of the volcano. Zhuo Ming looked at the 11 Lives challenger behind him and asked in a clear voice. Is there anyone else who is going to participate in the civil and martial duels? After asking the question, Zhuo Ming saw that no one else came forward, so he turned and walked toward the civil and martial duel area. Lin Yuan followed behind Zhuo Ming. When he thought about how he would have to rely on luck to draw a question that he was good at, he felt a headache. He didn't like the feeling of having to rely on luck when doing things. Suddenly, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. He might not have the mystical spiritual ingredient that could increase his luck, but he had the astrologer Ji Tan that could eliminate bad luck. Even if he didn't have the luck bonus, he must not be affected by bad luck. The astrologer Ji Tan was constantly growing in the spirit lock spatial zone. During the past dozen days, the astrologer Ji Tan had already bloomed for the 2nd time. Lin Yuan had collected all the pollen left behind by the astrologer Ji Tan's first bloom. Lin Yuan shook his hand and took out a brocade box. This brocade box contained the pollen that the astrologer Ji Tan had condensed for the first bloom. If the astrologer Ji Tan's pollen wanted to eliminate the bad luck in his body, he would need to swallow the pollen with his mouth. Therefore, Lin Yuan casually used his hand to pick up a small pinch of the pollen and put it in his mouth. At that moment, Zhong Zhe, who was walking in front of Lin Yuan, paused slightly, and he forcefully sniffed. He felt that there was a very faint fragrance in the air. Zhong Zhe realized that this fragrance was very strange. When he smelled it, it actually calmed his restless emotions due to his desire for battle. Zhong Zhe had always known that his desire for battle was the reason why his blood would boil uncontrollably whenever there was a battle. Part of it was because he liked to hone his skills through battle. Another part was because in the 2nd year after he had become the disciple of the Chef Supreme, his master had brought him to the outer realm to train, and he had been cursed by an expert from the outer realm who had used the sacred source lifeform's ability. Even though that expert had been killed by his master, the sacred source lifeform's body had been refined into a treasure, and he had possessed it. However, there had been no way to remove the curse, and it was like a brand in his soul. In the end, this curse had imperceptibly turned into a kind of misfortune that fused with his soul. This curse had always been a thorn in Zhongzai's side. When Zhongzai turned around, Lin Yuan had already put away the brocade box containing the astrological wisdom epiphyllum powder. Zhongzai was like a little wolf puppy, his nose wrinkled as he stopped in his tracks. When Lin Yuan walked to his side, Zhongzai walked side by side with Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan could not help but feel a little strange as he looked at Zhongzai, who was walking alongside him. She had just heard Long Tao say that Zhongzai was not a person who was easy to get along with, but now, how could a person who was obviously not easy to get along with be so kind to her? Upon seeing Lin Yuan looking at him, Zhongzai, whose nose was twitching, subconsciously said, "You're right. You smell so good." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan looked embarrassed and looked at Zhongzai in surprise. He hurriedly took 2 steps forward to distance himself from Zhongzai and followed closely behind Zhuo Ming. As soon as the words left his mouth, Zhongzai immediately felt that his words were somewhat ambiguous. Just as Zhongzai was about to continue walking alongside Lin Yuan, his thoughts paused. He thought about how the civil and martial duels were about to begin, and that he would not be able to say anything now. Zhongzai decided to wait until the civil and martial duels were over. Then, he would get to know this young man whose scent could soothe his emotions. The 3rd round. End of this chapter. Chapter 864. After following Zhuo Ming through the long corridor, Lin Yuan arrived at another area of the Night Glory Palace. This area had many small rooms, and it was very similar to the rows of rented top-notch breeding rooms and observation rooms of the Fey Observer Association on the Creation Master Association's 3rd floor. Lin Yuan couldn't see how many rooms there were, but when he looked into the distance, he saw that this area was at least 300 meters long. According to the construction method of 1 breeding room on each side, there should be at least 60 breeding rooms. Each breeding room's door was carved with a different beast head, and each beast head was holding a dragon species phase head in its mouth. Lin Yuan sighed in his heart. How much does Chief Guard Yi hate dragon species phase? Zhuo Ming arrived in front of a bronze statue that was carved with a beast head and lifted it up with ease. He then turned around and prepared to let the challengers of the civil and martial duels draw a question. When Zhuo Ming saw Lin Yuan, who was first in line behind him, he walked over to Lin Yuan while holding the bronze statue. Just as Zhuo Ming was about to hand the bronze statue to Lin Yuan for him to draw a question, Zhongzai took a step forward and took the bronze statue from Zhuo Ming. Zhongzai took a step forward and took the bronze statue from Zhuo Ming before saying to Lin Yuan. Zhongzai took a step forward and took the bronze statue from Zhuo Ming. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan gently thanked Zhongzai and extended his hand into the bronze statue's mouth. He took out one of the many sheepskin scrolls in the bronze statue's abdomen. After taking out the scroll, Lin Yuan looked at Zhongzai with some suspicion. Zhongzai's actions could be said to be the same as fawning on Lin Yuan. Zhongzai's sudden warm attitude toward Lin Yuan made Lin Yuan rather suspicious. Upon hearing Lin Yuan thanking him, Zhongzai's cold face revealed a faint smile without a trace. Zhongzai thought to himself. It seems like this youth named Lin Yuan isn't angry because of my slip of the tongue. Otherwise, he wouldn't thank me. Zhongzai also took out a sheepskin scroll from the bronze statue and handed it back to Zhuo Ming. Zhuo Ming didn't find it strange that Zhongzai took the initiative to get close to Lin Yuan. They were both His Majesty's disciples and were of the same age. It was normal for them to be close. However, the challengers standing behind Zhongzai, who had been curious about Lu Jie standing up for Lin Yuan, could not help but become even more curious. She did not understand what kind of magic this young man had to be able to make Chief Guard Ye's disciple stand up for him, and then to be so close to Chef Supreme's disciple. It was simply too enviable. There were only 11 people participating in both the civil and martial arena, so the examination questions were quickly drawn. Zhuo Ming looked at the time and said, "From now on, each of you can choose a breeding room. Enter the breeding room and open the sheepskin scroll to check the questions on it. Then, hand the questions to the spirit guardian outside the room. The spirit guardian will help you prepare the materials after obtaining the scroll. After preparing the materials, the spirit guardian will immediately leave your room and will not disturb you from completing the test." As Zhuo Ming spoke, he began calculating the time taken. Hearing Zhuo Ming's words, everyone chose a breeding room nearby and entered it. Although Lin Yuan still did not know what the questions on the sheepskin scroll were, his speed in choosing the breeding room was not slow at all. There were a total of 154 youths in the Yeyang Palace's outer palace. Excluding the 25 challengers who were participating in the civil and martial arena, there were a total of 75 challengers who were participating in the martial arena. There were a total of 54 challengers who were qualified to participate in both the civil and martial arena. After knowing the harsh examination rules of the civil and martial arena, only 11 of them still chose to participate in the civil and martial arena. It could be said that each of these 11 challengers was the elite among the elites, and they were very confident in their strength. Even if Lin Yuan did not get first place in the civil and martial arena, he had to ensure that he could at least get second place. For this, he would not waste a single minute or second. After entering the breeding room, Lin Yuan nodded to the spirit guardian, who was waiting inside. Then, he untied the ribbon on the sheepskin scroll and looked at the questions on the scroll. When he looked at Lin Yuan, the solemn expression on his face disappeared. It was replaced by a relaxed expression. Lin Yuan saw the words on the sheepskin scroll. He upgraded 5 lop-eared electric rabbits from bronze, elite, to bronze, flawless, and healed one of the bronze, normal, lop-eared electric rabbit's fatal injury. Then, he upgraded it to bronze, flawless, like the previous 5. Before drawing this test, Lin Yuan had used the pollen condensed by astrologer Zhi Tan's first flower to wash away the bad luck on his body. In other words, this test that Lin Yuan had drawn was guided by his body's providence. Before Lin Yuan had accidentally nurtured astrologer Zhi Tan, he did not believe that there was such a thing as luck in the world. This was because luck was simply too illusory and difficult to materialize. However, since astrologer Zhi Tan's ability was to remove bad luck, it indirectly proved that bad luck really existed in this world. Since there was bad luck, there must be providence on the other side. Especially after feeling the effects of providence, Lin Yuan decided to return to the return from faraway mansion to obtain more phase that could increase providence. For example, the 3 mountain river eternal life carps in the red sandalwood longevity fish tank could actually be considered a kind of providence fey. However, the mountain river eternal life carp's providence was targeted at plants, birds, beasts, fish, and insects. Its exclusive skill, place of life, did not have much effect on spirit chi professionals. At best, it would only make the life of the spirit chi professionals more comfortable. The providence phase that Lin Yuan was looking for could increase a spirit chi professional's providence. Lin Yuan had seen a few such phase when he had visited the rare life form pavilion previously. Each of them had a sky-high price, and Lin Yuan had only taken a few glances at them before they were taken off the shelves. These providence phase that were sold at sky-high prices in the rare life form pavilion were generally of very low grades. High-grade providence phase often existed in the hands of major factions. However, phase that could increase providence were truly rare. Even if the price was extremely high, there were still no factions that would nurture such phase as their own function. Generally, when a faction's function was developed to a certain extent, it could develop a second or even a third function. Take the Sun family at its peak as an example. Apart from the dew immortal garden that nurtured plant-type phase, they also had the dew congealing medical that had a healing function. Lin Yuan could now perfectly hold up the functions of Sky City's creation master by himself. The first function was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 865. Apart from customizing one bronze/epic Fey per day according to the fate letter, Sky City also had a deep cooperation with the veteran faction, the Sea of Bliss, the Dew Immortal Garden, and the Indigo Azure Guard. Master Duanli was still working for him for free, but he would be able to complete the deal with her in a month's time. Master Duanli would not need to help him concoct platinum potions day and night. As the only class for Creation Master in the Return from Faraway Manor, apart from researching the underground space's construction with Hu Quan, Master Hongshan basically spent the rest of his time enhancing phase for Zhang Xiaobai and the others. Master Hongshan did not have 3 heads and 6 arms. After enhancing the phase for Zhang Xiaobai and the others, it was enough for him to raise the grade of the Angelfish of Bliss. Therefore, the Return from Faraway Manor's creation function would not have much development in the short term. It was enough to rely on Lin Yuan to produce Creation Master resources like a perpetual motion machine. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that perhaps Sky City could rely on his Creation Master means and use the light from Providence as a function to develop a brand new development route. The spirit guard waiting in the room was rather surprised at Lin Yuan's young age when he entered. After Lin Yuan opened the scroll, the spirit guard had been staring at his expression. However, the spirit guard could not help but have some doubts. When he saw the examination question, the youth's brows did not frown. Instead, he relaxed and let out a long sigh of relief. During the culture competition, the breeding room that he was in had been lucky enough to be selected. The challenger who had participated in the culture competition had immediately frowned and had a sullen face after seeing the examination question as though he had lost his virginity. Just as the spirit guard was feeling puzzled, the youth walked in front of him and handed over the sheepskin scroll. "Thank you for your hard work." The spirit guard hurriedly took the sheepskin scroll from the young man's hand. After reading the questions on it, he immediately went to prepare it. At the same time, he was sure that the youth did not have a sullen face because he knew he had no chance at all. The youth's examination question was actually the quality enhancement examination question that tested the Creation Master's ability the most. After taking the sheepskin scroll, the spirit guard walked to the huge cabinet that filled half the wall in the breeding room. There were close to 1,000 drawers on the huge cabinet that took up half the wall. The spirit guard checked the code on the bottom right corner of the scroll and opened the corresponding drawer. He took out the diamond face storage box from the drawer and handed it to Lin Yuan before leaving the room. It could be said that his actions were done in one go. From reading the examination questions to preparing the materials, not even half a minute had passed. Lin Yuan placed all the items in the face storage box on the operating table. Lin Yuan saw 5 purple-eyed lop-eared electric rabbits looking at him curiously. Occasionally, their long ears would overlap and emit bright purple electric arcs. Apart from these 5 healthy lop-eared electric rabbits, there was another lop-eared electric rabbit that was curling its body into a ball. His 2 big ears were lying on the ground, charred black. It was obvious that he had suffered heavy injuries. After checking the severely injured lop-eared electric rabbit's condition, Lin Yuan was certain that it was not far from death. This lop-eared electric rabbit that was on the verge of death was the one that Lin Yuan had to heal in the sheepskin scroll. The lop-eared electric rabbit might be extremely good-looking, cute, and could be kept as a pet. When the weather turned cold during autumn and winter, the lop-eared electric rabbit would be placed on the neck, and its 2 long ears would be the softest scarf. However, unlike the cute appearance of the lop-eared electric rabbit, it was a very violent, power offense-type fey. The lop-eared lightning rabbit that was on the brink of death had most likely suffered a backlash from the lightning energy emitted from its overlapping ears when it was releasing its skill. Apart from these 6 lop-eared electric rabbits, the diamond face storage box was left with a huge pile of various spiritual ingredients. There were many types of spiritual ingredients, but each of them was relatively rare. In order to raise the lop-eared electric rabbit's quality and heal its roots, only a few spiritual ingredients were needed. It was likely that there were so many spiritual ingredients to increase the difficulty of the examination. Lin Yuan chose a silver spiritual ingredient, the ma boiling leaf, which had a relatively high number of spiritual ingredients. The ma boiling leaf was a spiritual ingredient that creation masters and healing-type spirit chi professionals commonly used. It was favored by creation masters and healing-type spirit chi professionals, but it didn't mean that the ma boiling leaf could heal fays. The ma boiling leaf's true effect was to let the fey fall into a deep coma after consuming it, reducing the pain during the healing process. Once Sky City's creation master's function was developed, the ma boiling leaf could be said to be an indispensable spiritual ingredient when Lin Yuan nurtured fays. When Lin Yuan enhanced fays, he would always do it in the spirit lock spatial zone to save time. Without the ma boiling leaf, some fays with high intelligence would have an impression of the spirit lock spatial zone's environment. This wasn't what Lin Yuan wanted. Lin Yuan fed the numbing boiling leaves to the 6 lop-eared electric rabbits, and they quickly fell asleep after consuming the numbing boiling leaves. Upon seeing the situation, Lin Yuan immediately summoned Genius. After Genius was summoned, it stretched out its 5 fluffy tails. Then, she quickly climbed onto Lin Yuan's shoulder and rubbed her cheek against Lin Yuan's shoulder while speaking in a childish voice. Lin Yuan, Chimey is preparing to live stream tomorrow night. Genius just helped Chimey set up a live stream room on Star Web. Lin Yuan felt a little strange. Why would Genius help to decorate Chimey's live streaming room? However, Lin Yuan didn't have the time to think about it. Genius, help me pick out the spirit materials that can be used to raise the quality of the 6 lop-eared lightning rabbits and heal their origins. After saying that, Lin Yuan extended his hand and covered the charred ears of the lop-eared electric rabbit that was on the verge of death. Lin Yuan circulated the spiritual power in his body and injected a massive amount of pure spiritual power into the lop-eared electric rabbit's body. In just a moment, the lop-eared electric rabbit's damaged roots recovered with Lin Yuan's hands. Its quality rose from bronze normal to bronze flawless like a rocket. In total, Lin Yuan had only used about 6 minutes. More than half of the time was used to heal the lop-eared electric rabbit's roots. Previously, when he nurtured fays and promoted them to epic, 95% of the time was spent on the transition from flawless to epic. Since it didn't require a lot of spirit chi to promote a phase quality to flawless, Lin Yuan could do it easily even if he wasn't in the spirit lock spatial zone. In fact, when Lin Yuan saw this question, he knew the true intention of the person who set this question. The second question was even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 867. Li Zhonglin sighed in admiration when he heard this. Regardless of what happens in the martial arena, Little Yuan is first in the culture arena. That means that he has secured the top 2 spots in both the culture and martial arenas. When we go back, help me get your father's last spirit savory pig out. I will cook a few dishes for Little Yuan. When Chef Supreme heard his daughter, Zhang Yingying's words, his face immediately darkened. Chef Supreme had sensed the Moon Empress gaze on him and felt her eyes full of vigor. In fact, even Chef Supreme himself was very amazed that Lin Yuan had been able to complete the civil and martial duel challenges within 20 minutes. It would be fine if Cold Moon and Black Moon, who were standing behind the Moon Empress, praised their young lord, but why was his daughter praising the Moon Empress disciple? She even said that he was much stronger than Zhongzhe. Wasn't this the same as admitting that Zhongzhe's creation master strength was inferior to Lin Yuan's? Furthermore, how was bringing Zhongzhe to improve his creation master strength considered entering the kitchen? Using cooking to perfectly fuse the components of spiritual ingredients was the path of a creation master that he pursued. Any path that perfectly fused the components of spiritual ingredients was a unique expression of life evolution. Among the Class 5 creation masters, only the bamboo monarch walked the path of a normal creation master's spirit fluid concoction. When the Moon Empress concocted her own unique formula, she would also use the moonlight to sublimate the spiritual ingredients into gaseous, material, and liquid states. Then, she would let these substances entangle and turn them into a wisp of fragrance. It was just like the method of concocting incense. Chef Supreme remembered that his daughter was very considerate when she was young. Ever since he accepted Li Zhonglin as a disciple, Li Zhonglin had started to take his precious daughter up trees to dig bird nests and jump into the fish pond to catch fish. She had never done anything good. Just as Chef Supreme was ridiculing Li Zhonglin, he heard Li Zhonglin's words. Li Zhonglin's words made Chef Supreme's already dark face turn as black as the bottom of a pot. Look! Look! Li Zhonglin, this bastard, is giving me a headache every day. He had even allowed his daughter to steal the last spirit-savory pig that he had been raising in the palace. Putting aside the fact that Li Zhonglin instigated his wife to steal from his master and father-in-law, what kind of behavior was that? There's only one spirit-savory pig left in the world because of you, yet you still don't want to let it go. If this spirit-savory pig was harmed as well, the kitchen incense palace's signature spirit item would be completely gone. Why didn't I see Gu Lang uproot the entire stretch of purple bamboo forest? Why didn't he go and chop the 2 silver-stamened gold luster caches outside the Radiant Moon Palace? Although he was complaining, Supreme Chef, who sat on the 13th chair, really couldn't do anything to his eldest disciple. A few days ago, he had said a few words to Li Zhonglin, and his daughter had immediately gone mad. If he said a few more words, wouldn't his daughter run away with Li Zhonglin again? The conversation between the Moon Empress and that calm voice had been heard by the senior factions and the top factions in Yeyang Palace. Only then did the senior factions and the top factions in charge of the Night Emperor Palace's inner palace suddenly understand Lin Yuan's identity. However, Lin Yuan's identity as the Moon Empress disciple did not surprise these top factions or veteran factions management generation. Those who should be shocked had already been shocked long ago. What else could be more shocking than a 17 or 18-year-old youth suppressing Chef Supreme's disciple? Being the first to complete the civil and martial challenges was even more shocking. Chef Supreme's young disciple was 23 years old after the new year. In terms of appearance, Lin Yuan and Zhong Zhe were at least 4 to 5 years apart. Now, it seemed that Lin Yuan's identity as the Moon Empress disciple was more reasonable to explain. Seeing Lin Yuan walk back to his small group, the senior factions and top factions management generation's gazes began to change. Most of the senior factions and top factions management generation's gazes gathered on Long Tu and Li Yunniao Kansas. Seeing that Long Tu and Li Yunniao Kan did not look surprised, it was clear that they obviously knew Lin Yuan's identity from the beginning. In the Coiled Dragon Valley, Li Yunniao Kan could form a relationship with the Moon Empress and Chief Guard Ye's disciple, and the other top factions and veteran factions were very envious. As for Gao Pei, the other top factions and veteran factions management generation simply did not want to take another look at him. It could be said that Gao Pei was the biggest winner of this Nix assembly. Gao Pei's son, Gao Feng, was not just in this small group. It seemed that compared to Long Tao, Li Xian and the Moon Empress were more familiar with Chief Guard Ye's disciple. Moreover, Gao Feng had also obtained Lord Cicada Cry's favor and was very likely to be nominated as a disciple by Lord Cicada Cry during the Nix Assembly's main meeting. They did not know what kind of luck Gao Pei had to be able to have such a son. As for Sun Ningxiang in the small group, many of the senior factions and top factions' gazes became somewhat complicated. There had been rumors that the Sun family's internal changes had occurred, and it was very likely that they would fall from the ranks of the top factions within a few years. But now, it seemed that even if the Sun family's Du Immortal Garden was weak, it was definitely not simple internally. Many of the top faction's management generation, who were eyeing the Sun family's Du Immortal Garden, could not help but ponder in their hearts. At that moment, Chef Supreme's expression became a little better when he saw Zhong Zhe also walking out of the long corridor. It had been about 23 minutes since the start of the civil and martial duels, and it was considered normal for Zhong Zhe to come out at this time. After seeing Zhong Zhe walk out, the bamboo monarch, who had not spoken much since Gu Lang had gone to participate in the civil and martial duels, spoke up. In a while, the two young fellows who are going to compete in the civil and martial duels are already here. After speaking, the bamboo monarch looked at the Moon Empress. The bamboo monarch had seen Zhong Zhe's strength before, and he had always been on par with his little disciple, Gu Lang. The civil and martial duels would be able to see the depth of the Moon Empress disciple's combat ability. When Gao Feng saw Lin Yuan walking over, he immediately pounced on him and gave him a bear hug. When Gao Feng used his hand to pat someone's shoulder, it gave people the feeling that someone had smashed a brick on their body. This bear hug made Lin Yuan feel as though a tank had collided with him. Upon seeing Lin Yuan's face turn red from Gao Feng's collision, Lu Jia hurriedly went forward to pull them apart. Long Tao, Li Xian, and Sun Ningxiang also came forward. Gao Feng chuckled. "Brother, congratulations. You finished both the civil and martial arenas very quickly." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan also revealed a smile. However, Lin Yuan was not happy that he had obtained first place in the civil and martial duels. First place was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 868. Lin Yuan clearly knew that he had obtained first place in both the civil and martial duels due to luck. If it had been another question, he might have become the last one. From the bottom of his heart, Lin Yuan felt that it was hard not to feel happy from such sincere congratulations between friends without any impurities. After Long Tao congratulated Lin Yuan, he saw Zhong Zhe returning to the outer palace through the long corridor. Long Tao frowned and turned to ask Lin Yuan, how much do you know about Zhong Zhe's strength? Lin Yuan frowned and turned to ask, Lin Yuan, how much do you know about Zhong Zhe's strength? Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan shook his head gently. He did not know anything about Zhong Zhe's strength. However, Lin Yuan did not feel that there was anything to worry about. During the duel with Zhong Zhe, he could use Morbius True Data to examine Zhong Zhe's fei. In an instant, he would have a comprehensive understanding of Zhong Zhe's contracted fei. Zhong Zhe might also be a creation master and could also inspect his fei. However, Lin Yuan didn't have any intention of summoning his contracted fei in the civil and martial dueling ring. Therefore, Zhong Zhe's creation master ability would not be of any use in the martial duel. Since it was the civil and martial duel, he only needed to have a duel against Chef Supreme's disciple, Zhong Zhe. Lin Yuan felt that his sacred source life form, sacred sword embracing queen, was destined to be used. Upon seeing that Lin Yuan did not know Zhong Zhe's strength, Long Tao recalled the duel between him and Zhong Zhe in the Radiant Sacred Hall. He said with a grave expression, Zhong Zhe's contracted feis are mainly fire-type feis and have extremely strong explosive power. During the duel, you have to pay special attention to Zhong Zhe's sudden explosive power. At this point, Long Tao didn't continue speaking. Firstly, this was a secret duel in the Radiant Sacred Hall. Secondly, it had been a long time since Long Tao and Zhong Zhe's duel. During this period of time, Zhong Zhe's strength should have improved greatly again. Long Tao was afraid that if he revealed Zhong Zhe's strength during the duel, it might cause Lin Yuan to misjudge Zhong Zhe's strength. If that was the case, Long Tao would have committed a great sin. Therefore, Long Tao only gave a general description of Zhong Zhe's phase attributes and reminded Lin Yuan to be careful of Zhong Zhe's instant explosive power. At that time, the blazing fire had almost cast a shadow on Long Tao. When Lin Yuan heard Long Tao's words, his eyes lit up. If Zhongzhe mainly contracted a fire attribute Fei, it would simply be great news for him. Due to the princess robe's engraved laws, his resistance to darkness type was the strongest. Next was the resistance to the fire attribute. The cold flame law, which Lin Yuan had specially upgraded to Myth 3, contained the changes of the ice and fire attributes. Moreover, the gilded flame dragon lice's skirt was also engraved with the burning flame law that the gilded flame dragon lice had comprehended. The flame dragonless law crystal fragments had been provided by Duanhe when he joined Sky City. Although the law crystal of the mythical breed gilded flame dragon lice wasn't complete, the small pile of law crystal fragments could still be pieced together into a complete law crystal. This unlucky flame dragon lice must have been killed by the lightning horn sky rumbling snail and the six-headed sea demon snake. Otherwise, the law crystal fragments wouldn't be so complete. It could be said that Lin Yuan had the first advantage in the duel with Zhongzhe. If Zhongzhe's contracted Fei was not engraved on the princess robe, even if Lin Yuan had integrated all the Radiance Federation's recorded combat skills and movement techniques, he would still have to be cautious when using the spirit herbs to fight. In that kind of intensive attack, it was not realistic to use the ethereal jellyfish's diamond ability, spatial transfer, to transfer the space filled with elemental energy to the dimension. It was more cost-effective for the ethereal jellyfish's diamond ability, spatial transfer, to transfer large-scale elemental damage instantaneously. Otherwise, the spiritual power consumed by the ethereal jellyfish's diamond ability, spatial transfer, was not something that Lin Yuan could easily afford. After understanding Zhongzhe's Fei's attributes, Lin Yuan had some confidence in his heart. Big brother Long, I'll be careful. Long Tao looked into Lin Yuan's eyes and found that he didn't panic about the upcoming duel. Instead, there was a sense of confidence in his eyes. Long Tao knew that Lin Yuan's strength was definitely much stronger than he had imagined. Long Tao couldn't help but be full of anticipation for the duel between Zhongzhe and Lin Yuan. Zhongzhe walked to Gu Lang's side and glanced in Lin Yuan's direction from time to time. Gu Lang asked with a smile. "What's wrong? Are you shocked?" "Are you?" At this point, Gu Lang immediately stopped. Gu Lang realized that Zhongzhe's eyes didn't show any disappointment because of the shock. Instead, he was abnormally excited. At the same time, there was a trace of imperceptible passion in his eyes. "Big brother Gu Lang, I realized today that I met someone who can suppress my desire to fight." Upon hearing Zhongzhe's words, Gu Lang was confused. Gu Lang's curse that had turned into misfortune could be said to be the Kitchen Fragrance Palace's secret. After Chef Supreme realized that he couldn't resolve Zhongzhe's misfortune, he didn't look for the Bamboo Monarch and the Moon Empress for help. Thus, Gu Lang naturally couldn't know the true reason why Zhongzhe was abnormally fanatical about fighting. Just as Gu Lang was feeling puzzled, Zhongzhe pulled him and said, "Let's go, big brother Gu Lang. Brother Gu Lang, let's go over there and say hello to them." Without giving Gu Lang any time to react, Gu Lang was pulled by Zhongzhe toward Lin Yuan's direction. Gu Lang came back to his senses and didn't struggle free from Zhongzhe's hand. In Gu Lang's opinion, it was normal to greet them over there. The Moon Empress and Chief Guard Ye's disciple naturally had to get to know each other, and they would have to interact in the future. However, Gu Lang didn't understand why Zhongzhe, who was a relatively indifferent person, would take the initiative to greet others. Could it be because of the civil and martial duels, Zhongzhe and the Moon Empress disciple appreciated each other's talents? Zhongzhe pulled Gu Lang over to Lin Yuan's side and saw Gao Feng standing beside Lin Yuan with his hand on Lin Yuan's shoulder. At that moment, Zhongzhe noticed that the 6 people in Lin Yuan's small circle had noticed him, so he immediately introduced himself. "I am Zhongzhe." After speaking, Zhongzhe took a step forward without a trace and inserted himself between Gao Feng and Lin Yuan. Upon seeing this, Gao Feng hurriedly moved to the side and subconsciously thought that Zhongzhe and Lin Yuan knew each other before. Zhongzhe, who was standing beside Lin Yuan with satisfaction, started to quickly sniff. However, after this sniff, Zhongzhe realized that he couldn't smell that fragrance that could suppress his misfortune anymore. The second one was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 869. Thus, Zhongzhe subconsciously turned his head and took a step closer to Lin Yuan. Since Zhongzhe was taller than Lin Yuan, Zhongzhe's action of sniffing at the top of his head made Lin Yuan think that his hair had a strange smell. When Lin Yuan's body was weak in the Xia region, no matter how busy he would still take a bath every day. Now that his body was strong and his conditions were better, he did not miss a single day. Moreover, he had already used the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar to wash away the impurities on his body. Even if he did not wash his hair for a lifetime, there would not be any unpleasant smell. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of what Zhongzhe had said to him. "You smell so good." Lin Yuan finally realized that Zhongzhe was talking about the smell of the astrology wisdom epiphyllum's pollen. This made Lin Yuan look at Zhongzhe with an increasingly strange gaze. There was something strange about astrologer Ji Tan's pollen, and that was that those who weren't infected with misfortune were almost unable to detect its fragrance. Only those with bad luck could smell the fragrance of astrologer Ji Tan's pollen. The heavier the misfortune on one's body, the greater the attraction of the astrology wisdom epiphyllum's pollen. It was just like when Lin Yuan had eaten the pollen, he had not smelled any fragrance at all. It was as though he was swallowing some spicy scraps in his throat. Lin Yuan thought to himself. Could it be that Zhongzhe is also tainted with misfortune? Thus, Lin Yuan took out a small piece of pollen that had fallen on the breeding table beside the astrology wisdom epiphyllum and gently crushed it into powder with his fingertips. Lin Yuan immediately noticed an excited look on Zhongzhe's face, and the speed at which he sniffed his nose became faster. He was just like a small wolf dog. After verification, Lin Yuan also confirmed his guess in his heart. It seemed that Zhongzhe was indeed infected with misfortune. Given Zhongzhe's sensitivity to the astrology wisdom epiphyllum's pollen, the misfortune on Zhongzhe was already very serious. Zhongzhe was a cold person who was not good at talking. After joining Lin Yuan's small group, he had not spoken much. On the other side, Gu Lang was a gentle and talkative person. Gu Lang deliberately befriended him. In just a short while, Lin Yuan, Lu Jia, Long Tao, Li Xian, Gao Feng, and Sun Ningxiang got into a fight. This made the younger generation of the surrounding top and veteran forces look at this small group with even more envy. In Indigo Azure City, everyone had to address Zheng Kaiyuan as second young master. However, ever since Miao Zhuo had been thrown out, Zheng Kaiyuan seemed to have lost his backbone and was overcautious in everything he did. Zheng Kaiyuan originally wanted to participate in the martial arena competition, but because he was constantly panicking, he didn't dare to participate in the end. Before Zheng Kaiyuan came to the Nix assembly, his master, Miao Qi, had instructed him to stay by Miao Zhuo's side. Now that something so serious had happened to Miao Zhuo, even if his master, Miao Qi, doted on him, he was destined to be implicated by Miao Zhuo. In fact, the Miao clan might even abandon their support and assistance to the Zheng clan in a fit of rage. At the thought of his upcoming situation, Zheng Kaiyuan mustered up all his courage and walked toward Lin Yuan's small group. On one hand, Zheng Kaiyuan wanted to help Miao Zhuo and see if he could get the forgiveness of Chief Guard Ye's disciple and that youth. On the other hand, Zheng Kaiyuan felt that he was very good at making friends. He wanted to see if he could be lucky enough to get along with Chief Guard Ye, Chef Supreme, and Bamboo Monarch's disciple and integrate into this small group. When Zheng Kaiyuan walked, he felt that his legs were trembling because the status of these people he was walking toward was not something he could compare to. Even Miao Zhuo, whom he had always had to look up to, could not compare to these people's statuses. Otherwise, Miao Zhuo would not have been thrown out with his soul injured because he had casually pointed at him. Seeing Zheng Kaiyuan walking in his direction, Zhong Zhe, who was quickly sniffing beside Lin Yuan, immediately frowned. Zhong Zhe, who had always been indifferent, had always disliked people approaching him in such situations. Therefore, as Zheng Kaiyuan approached, Zhong Zhe's expression became colder and colder. Normally, Zhong Zhe would have flared up and asked Zheng Kaiyuan to get lost. However, Zhong Zhe had not experienced the conflict in the Night Palace and did not know the relationship between Zheng Kaiyuan and Lin Yuan. If Zheng Kaiyuan was Lin Yuan's friend, it would not be good for him to rashly flare up, so Zhong Zhe endured it. When Lu Jie saw Zheng Kaiyuan walk closer, he subconsciously stepped forward to block in front of Lin Yuan. He could not forget the attack that he, Lin Yuan, and the others had suffered outside Indigo Azure City. Jiao Hansong was from the Zheng family's third lineage, so it was reasonable to say that he had no direct relationship with Zheng Kaiyuan. However, Nightmare 6 had been sent by Zheng Kaiyuan, so there was a death feud between them. If this was not the Night Palace's outer palace, even if he was the Night Palace's young palatial lord, he would not have killed Zheng Kaiyuan in front of so many veteran factions and the younger generation of the top factions. At this moment, Zheng Kaiyuan was already a dead man. Zheng Kaiyuan was about to greet him carefully but did not expect Chief Guard Ye's disciple to be so hostile toward him. Could it be because of the conflict just now? Miao Zhuo had been the one acting tough in that conflict, and he had only stood by Miao Zhuo's side. Apart from that, he had not done anything in that conflict. When Lin Yuan saw Zheng Kaiyuan walking over with a faint timid expression, he vaguely understood Zheng Kaiyuan's intention. Lin Yuan immediately revealed a meaningful smile. Lin Yuan waved at Zheng Kaiyuan and said, "All right. If you have something to say, why don't you come over and say it?" When Zheng Kaiyuan heard Lin Yuan's words, the faintly timid expression on his face immediately turned into pleasant surprise. Lu Jie looked at Lin Yuan with some confusion, not understanding his purpose in doing this. Lin Yuan called Zheng Kaiyuan to his side and gave him his contact information after a few words. He then ignored Zheng Kaiyuan. When he revealed his identity at the Nix assembly, the Miao family would definitely think of ways to find an opportunity to apologize to him and Lu Jie. Lin Yuan didn't reject Zheng Kaiyuan's goodwill. Instead, he asked Zheng Kaiyuan to leave his contact information. It was to mislead the disciples of the other veteran forces and peak forces into thinking that Zheng Kaiyuan had formed a relationship with them. This would also give the Miao family a way to contact them. At that time, he would just sit back and wait for the Miao family to come knocking on his door. There had always been more than one way to attack the enemy. In addition to the hard steel in the front, the poisonous sugar in the back was often more lethal. At that moment, Zhuo Ming and Yuzha returned to the outer palace through the long corridor with several challengers from both the civil and martial arenas. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan took a deep breath, knowing that the real battle was about to begin. Third night, asking for monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 870. Following closely behind Zhuo Ming and Yuzha was a tall woman. She looked to be 25 or 26 years old. She looked rather mature and had a mature figure. When she walked, she seemed to be thinking about something. The tall woman hurriedly walked 2 steps to Lurk's side and asked softly. Yuzha hurriedly walked to Yuzha's side and asked softly, "Lady Yuzha, how long did the first and second place of the civil and martial duels take?" Upon hearing that, Yuzha told the tall woman the time Lin Yuan and Zhong Zhe took to pass the test. As soon as Zhuo Ming and Yuzha's figures appeared in the long corridor, the outer palace of Night Palace had quietened down. The woman was quite far away from Lin Yuan. Even though the outer palace was very quiet and the woman's question was not clear, it still reached Lin Yuan's ears. Lin Yuan could not help but raise his brows. This tall woman looked so mature, but she actually had a baby's voice. Moreover, it was a little too coquettish. Through his perception, Lin Yuan found that this tall woman had a rich vitality fluctuation. He was abnormally familiar with this kind of vitality fluctuation. Whenever Lin Yuan activated the Jasmine Lily's exclusive skill, Life Imprint, and consumed the vitality energy in it, his body would be the conductor of the huge vitality. Even after the vitality energy in the Life Imprint was exhausted, his body would still carry a special vitality fluctuation for a period of time. It could be assumed that this tall woman had used some sort of trump card when she was completing the civil and martial duel challenges. The tall woman took less than 40 minutes to complete the civil and martial duels. If Lin Yuan's record was correct, it should be 39 minutes and 27 seconds. The tall woman's speed of completing the test was nearly 3 minutes faster than Long Tao's. It could be seen that this tall woman's creation master ability was strong. The green spirit chi clothing that the tall woman was wearing had the simplified imprints of hundreds of purebred healing type phase. These simplified imprints were spread on this green spirit chi clothing in a disorderly manner, but it gave this green spirit chi clothing a flourishing beauty. According to the faction symbol on the woman's neck, Lin Yuan knew that this tall woman was from a top faction, the Rhine Life Form. The Rhine Life Form had absolute authority and nobility among the Radiance Federation's top factions. Every 3 years, as the top factions declined or rose, the top factions would be rearranged. Rhine, on the other hand, had been in the top 3 of the top forces for nearly 100 years and had never changed his position. Even if there were any changes, it would be between the first and the third. The Rhine Guild Club, which was under the banner of Rhine Living Guild, had become the champion of the Guild Alliance's tournament last year. When Long Tao saw that Lin Yuan had been looking at this tall woman from the Rhine Life Form, he said, "That's right. This woman's name is Sheng Yin. She's the person with the most potential among the Rhine Life Form's younger generation. She's also one of the younger generation that the Rhine Life Forms fully support. This woman might not be in the Radiance 100 sequence, but she has always been active among the younger generation. As the leader of the competition in the Rhine Club. He never goes on stage, but he's always making battle plans for the Rhine Club Guild." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan immediately thought of Shi Su and Shi Su. As the Radiance 100 Sequence 8, Shi Su was also a member of the Rhine Guild Club's main force. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard Long Tao's rather fearful voice. Given Sheng Yin's age and strength, she can be in the Radiance 100 sequence. However, she has never participated in the Radiance 100 sequence selection. Otherwise, White Devil Daisy wouldn't be known as the strongest healing type spirit chi professional in the Radiance 100 sequence. It is rumored that Sheng Yin has a radiant light medal. Based on the functionality and limitations of healing type spirit chi professionals, even if Sheng Yin has no fate as a radiant light envoy, it is still possible for her to enter the Radiant Light Knights and become one of the 10 members. Lin Yuan could keenly sense that Long Tao had already regarded this woman named Sheng Yin as his competitor, so he secretly remembered her name. After leaving Zhou Ming and Yuxia's side, most of the younger female members of the veteran and peak forces gathered around Sheng Yin. Sheng Yin squinted her eyes and smiled sweetly, greeting the girls around her. Obviously, he was very popular. Sheng Yin won the 3rd place in the civil and military arena. According to the rules of the civil and military arena, Sheng Yin won the 3rd place. At this moment, Sheng Yin didn't need to participate in the civil and martial duels. She had already secured 3rd place in the civil and martial duels. She could obtain 90 drops of silver stamen gold luster kasha nectar that could wash away impurities on the body and 10 drops of silver stamen gold luster kasha nectar that could wash away soul impurities. It could be said that the entire Yeyang Palace, be it the inner palace or the outer palace, had their eyes on Lin Yuan and Zhong Zhe. Lin Yuan felt his blood boil for a long time. In the past few months, Lin Yuan had been constantly improving his strength and increasing his trump cards for this battle. Unlike Lin Yuan's boiling blood, Zhong Zhe, who had never been able to control himself in battles, sniffed the fragrance and felt a rare calmness in his heart. For some reason, Zhongzhe was very reluctant to leave this smell, or perhaps he liked the feeling of standing next to this young man in front of him. In a while, the civil and military arena's final duel would be between him and Lin Yuan, and he probably would not be able to smell this fragrance on the stage. At that time, his old problem would act up again, and his mind would be controlled by the enthusiasm of battle and drown in the thrill of battle. When Zhongzhe had completed the civil and military arena section of the civil and military arena section, he had thought that he would be the first in the civil and military arena without any suspense. After coming out, he found out that the first place in the civil and military arena had already been taken by someone else. Thus, Zhongzhe focused his attention elsewhere and wanted to know who was the first place in the civil and military arena. In the end, he did not expect the first place in the civil and military arena section to be the young man whose aura could suppress his misfortune. Somehow, Zhongzhe felt that there was a special kind of fate between him and Lin Yuan. However, Zhongzhe was also a very competitive person. Since he had lost the civil and military arena section, he had to win it back in the martial arena section. At that moment, Zhuo Ming walked to the place where the martial arena section had been held and announced loudly. The civil and military arena section of the civil and military arena section has officially ended. Now, let us invite Lord Lin Yuan and Lord Zhongzhe onto the stage to complete the civil and military arena section. Zhuo Ming's words caused the pupils of the veteran factions and the top faction's younger generation to shrink. Everyone sharply noticed that Zhuo Ming had used the word Lord when addressing Lin Yuan. First place. End of this chapter. Chapter 871. Moreover, Lin Yuan's name was before Zhongzhe's, which meant that Zhuo Ming subconsciously thought that Lin Yuan's status was higher than Zhongzhe's. Everyone could not help but guess Lin Yuan's identity again. Many of the top faction's younger generation thought that before coming to the Great Night Assembly, the mysterious disciple that the Moon Empress had accepted might also appear at the Great Night Assembly. It seemed that Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple. The veteran faction's younger generation could not all guess Lin Yuan's identity, but almost all of the top faction's younger generation had heard the news in advance. Even if the news was blocked, the top faction's younger generation still heard that the blood moon in the sky a few months ago was related to the Moon Empress' mysterious disciple. At that moment, Zhongzhe subconsciously walked in Zhuo Ming's direction, but then he thought of something and stopped. He turned his body slightly. Although Zhongzhe did not say anything to invite Lin Yuan, his actions were obviously waiting for Lin Yuan to leave together. Since Zhongzhe had just joined the small circle, even Long Tao, Li Xian, Gao Feng, and Sun Ningxiang, who were more familiar with Lin Yuan, still sincerely cheered him on. Lu Jie stood by Lin Yuan's side and did not move at all. He only cheered Lin Yuan on. Gu Lang raised his eyebrows in surprise when he saw Lu Jie's actions. Under normal circumstances, cheering on two people at the same time was undoubtedly the wisest choice. However, Lu Jie only cheered for Lin Yuan, which proved that he had a strong preference for Lin Yuan. This was a sign that their relationship was extremely good. Gu Lang had just met Lin Yuan, so he naturally had a better relationship with Zhongzhe. However, Gu Lang still said to Zhongzhe and Lin Yuan separately. Zhongzhe, Lin Yuan, you two have to do your best later. If Lin Yuan wins and Zhongzhe's skills are inferior, why don't you let Zhongzhe cook personally and treat the three of us to a big meal at the Kitchen Fragrance Palace? Zhongzhe stared at Gu Lang for a long time, feeling that Gu Lang was taking advantage of him. However, Zhongzhe was very willing to treat Lin Yuan to a meal. Thinking about how he had tricked Gu Lang and made Gu Lang only compete in the civil arena, Zhongzhe could only nod and agree. Long Tao, Gao Feng, Li Xian, and Sun Ningxiang could tell that Gu Lang had assigned the four of them. Long Tao, Li Xian, Gao Feng, and son Ningxiang didn't have any objections. With their status, they were not qualified to enter a place like the Kitchen Incense Palace. Seeing Zhongzhe nod his head, Gulang added. If Zhongzhe wins and Lin Yuan's skills are inferior, then Zhongzhe will have to fulfill his promise at the Night Message Pavilion and set up 300 plates in the Kitchen Fragrance Palace. When the time comes, I'll treat the two of you to a meal cooked by Zhongzhe. Don't think that Zhongzhe usually doesn't like to talk, but when it comes to cooking, no one can compare. Lu Jie couldn't help but show a defiant expression behind his mask. I, Lu Jie, have never been afraid of anyone when it comes to cooking. When Lin Yuan ate the food he cooked, he was full of praises. Lu Jie felt that he should compete with Zhongzhe in cooking if he had the chance. Due to the special nature of his sacred source life form, he could not use it against Zhongzhe. Since Zhongzhe had a sacred source life form in the lead, Lu Jie shouldn't be able to win against him. However, when it came to cooking, even if Zhongzhe was Chef Supreme's disciple, he might not be able to compare to Lu Jie. Lu Jie was the man who had captured the appetite of the entire return from faraway manor. Before Zheng Kaiyuan had come to the Nix conference, he had wanted to attract everyone's attention. However, now that he was in this small circle and was the center of attention, Zheng Kaiyuan felt an indescribable pressure. The more one cared about their status, the more they would understand the weight of their status. The gazes of the top faction's younger generation all weighed down on Zheng Kaiyuan, causing sweat to appear on Zheng Kaiyuan's back. However, Zheng Kaiyuan raised his head high and tried his best to pretend that he was a member of this small circle. Seeing that everyone was cheering for Lin Yuan and Zhongzhe, Zheng Kaiyuan quickly and carefully joined in. However, when he saw Zhongzhe's stern expression, Zheng Kaiyuan immediately wanted to retreat. Thinking that Lin Yuan had called him over, Zheng Kaiyuan mustered his courage and walked to Lin Yuan's side. Zheng Kaiyuan, who had always been eloquent, could not help but stutter. Lord Lin Yuan, good luck. Lin Yuan looked at Zheng Kaiyuan with a meaningful gaze. When Zheng Kaiyuan met Lin Yuan's gaze, he felt a chill run down his spine, and he panicked. At this moment, Zheng Kaiyuan heard the clear and pleasant voice of the young man. You have to work hard too. Work hard and complete the mission of a communication link. People were destined to be frivolous after gaining power. Frivolousness toward people of lower status would bring envy. Frivolousness toward people of equal status would bring envy. Frivolousness toward people of higher status would only bring disgust. If the Miao family's family head personally begged Zheng Kaiyuan, how arrogant would Zheng Kaiyuan be in the Miao family and the Zheng family? Lin Yuan had just called Zheng Kaiyuan into his small circle and observed Zheng Kaiyuan's performance. Lin Yuan knew that Zheng Kaiyuan was not a humble person. Lin Yuan was not afraid that Zheng Kaiyuan would be arrogant in the Miao family and the Zheng family, but he was afraid that Zheng Kaiyuan would not be arrogant enough. In the future, Lin Yuan would not need to personally deal with Zheng Kaiyuan. When a platform was built from flat ground, it would collapse without any push. The higher the platform was, the harder the person standing on the platform would fall when it collapsed. What kind of torture would be waiting for Zheng Kaiyuan from the Miao family and the Zheng family? When hatred accumulated to the extreme, it would turn into a malicious spirit. Lin Yuan could treat his friends like spring all year round, but when facing enemies that wanted to take his life, he felt that it was not enough to turn into a cold winter. Lin Yuan and Zhongzhe entered the martial arena under everyone's eyes. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and slightly gathered strength in his feet. He leaned forward and entered a fully focused offensive state. Zhongzhe left Lin Yuan's side and stood on the stage. That battle frenzy could no longer be suppressed. Following Zhou Ming's command, Zhongzhe immediately summoned the two Feis. One of the palm-sized orange rats did not join the battle after it was summoned. After it was summoned, it did not join the battle. Instead, it scuttled onto Zhongzhe's shoulder and squeaked. The other was a giant magma ball that was constantly changing its shape. In just a short period of time, the giant magma ball had changed back and forth into 7 or 8 different beasts. Every time it transformed, the giant magma ball would emit the unique wild aura of the beast. The second one was even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 872. Lin Yuan subconsciously used true data to look at the palm-sized orange rat and the huge magma ball that could constantly transform into various beast forms. Fey name, Sky-Burning Centipede, Fey species, Fur/Toothed Beast, Fey grade, Diamond, 10 out of 10, Fey type, Fire, Fey quality, Fantasy V abilities Frowny Face Fire Devour, increase one's fire element capacity by devouring strange flames and allow the fire element in the body to transform according to the characteristics of the devoured strange flames. Scorching Gaze, gather pure fire element energy in the eyes to stare at the target. The target being stared at will enter a burning state. Fire Tempering, extract the energy in the strange flames and use various types of strange flames to temper one of the strange flames, inducing the strange flames to evolve. During the tempering process, one's physique can be enhanced at the same time. Flame Revival, instantly condense all the fire element energy into flames with the burning characteristics. The flames in the burning state have the effect of burning vitality. Group Flame Heart Flame, sacrifice 100 types of flames with different characteristics and condense a bunch of flames that can burn the spirit and spiritual energy. It will burn the target's spirit and spiritual energy. When the target's spirit and spiritual energy are exhausted, a flame will ignite from the depths of the target's heart and spiritual energy, burning the body from the inside out. Flame Energy Transmission, transmit one's own flame energy to other fire element phase and cause them to enter a berserk state. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Exceptional Flame 8 Refinements, refine 8 types of flames in the body into source flames. When attacking the target, spit out 8 types of exceptional flames. The 8 types of exceptional flames will stack up continuously for 8 times of gradually increasing damage. Fire Fantasyland, activate all the fire characteristics in the body. Each fire characteristic will turn into a brick and use the bricks and tiles to form a domain formed by the fire characteristics. Within the domain, the fire damage will be multiplied. Fey name, Reincarnation Flame Beast, Source Fire, Fey species, Elemental/Elemental class, Fey grade, Diamond, 10/10, Fey type, Fire/Source, Fey quality, Fantasy III abilities Frowny Face Metal Refining, devour metal and use flames to burn the metal, forming a viscous magma-like body. Beast Type Attachment, by devouring the bloodline power of a specific beast, increase the lava body's transformation ability. The transformed lava body will launch a special flame attack based on the phase bloodline advantage. Beast Bloodline Fusion, can fuse multiple beast bloodlines within one's body, forming a flame beast that combines various beast bloodlines and innate abilities. Flame of Reincarnation, when the reincarnation flame beast is fatally injured, as long as there is a continuous supply of fire elemental energy, the reincarnation flame beast will be reborn within the fire elemental energy. Boiling Flame Body, relies on swallowing metal to form a magma body that quickly spits out fire-type energy. While dealing burn damage to the target, the molten metal will condense into a weapon to attack the target. Reincarnation Point, the reincarnation flame beast will offer half of its fire elemental energy as a sacrifice. After the sacrifice, it will automatically activate its second exclusive skill, Lava Demon God. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Flame Division, when receiving a fatal attack, the reincarnation flame beast will automatically split its body to offset the damage. At the same time, it will rely on the beast-type phase bloodline to split into a new body. The number of splits depends on the number of beast-type bloodlines in the body. Lava Demon God, uses pure fire elemental energy to promote the fusion of the beast-type phase bloodline in the reincarnation flame beast's body and uses the pure fire elemental energy to induce multiple distortions and evolutions, forming a monster with a lava body. After the lava demon god appears, it will attack all targets on the field indiscriminately. Just as Lin Yuan finished looking at the two-phase exclusive skills, the huge lava ball had already turned into a 4-meter-long, 2-meter-tall majestic tiger. It roared and pounced at him. The lava giant tiger's roar contained blazing fire elemental energy, which caused the air in the arena to become abnormally scorched. If Sua Ming hadn't put up a barrier, the younger generation of the top factions and veteran factions wouldn't have been able to enjoy the show in peace. At that moment, they were already unable to bear the blazing fire elemental energy. At that moment, the younger generation, including Wuxia, couldn't help but exclaim. Zhongzhe had already started his attack, but Lin Yuan had yet to summon his contracted Fei. Just as the blazing fire elemental energy was about to engulf Lin Yuan, even louder exclamations echoed. Even the younger generation of the veteran factions and the top factions, who had received good education since young, couldn't help but curse. Fuck, Lord Sua Ming has already said that the match has begun, and Lord Zhongzhe has also summoned his Fei to attack. Why isn't Lin Yuan summoning his Fei? Damn! With such pure fire elemental energy burning, I'm afraid even a piece of platinum spiritual ingredient will be melted into soup. Could it be that an accident is going to happen during the duel? Will Lin Yuan turn into coke? Sun Ningxiang and Gao Feng didn't expect Zhongzhe's attack to be so fierce. They were a little flustered and couldn't calm down to analyze the situation on the stage. Upon seeing Lin Yuan being engulfed by the flames, Wuxia subconsciously wanted to rush toward the arena. At that moment, Wuxia felt a pair of hands land on his shoulders, and Gu Lang's gentle voice echoed in his ears. Concern leads to confusion. As the young palatial lord of Night End Palace, do you still doubt Sua Ming's control of the battlefield? If something really happens to Lin Yuan, I think Sua Ming will be the most anxious one. Wuxia still clenched his fists and gritted his teeth as he looked in the direction of the arena. Just like Wuxia's concern, the Moon Empress was also shocked when she saw the fire engulfing Lin Yuan. However, she immediately calmed down because she saw Lin Yuan, who was in the blazing flames, swinging his fist and using his physical body to smash at the tiger-shaped Fei that had transformed into the reincarnation flame beast. It could be said that Lin Yuan wasn't the slightest bit affected by the blazing flames. It was just like how the raging flames carried by the tiger-shaped Fei's roar had no temperature. Under Lin Yuan's punch, the huge tiger-shaped Fei's body was ejected like a cannonball and ruthlessly smashed into the Night End Palace's outer palace's floor, which was made of suzerain dark crystal. Lin Yuan flipped over and stood cleanly on the ground. He looked at Zhongzhe, who was immersed in the battle, and smiled. If you want to cause damage to me, the intensity of such flames is still far from enough. After writing the data of the two Feis for 3.5 hours, they had lost 100 strands of hair. On account of Button's hard work, please give me monthly votes and recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 873. If the younger generation of the veteran factions and pinnacle factions had been worried about Lin Yuan's situation, then they were extremely surprised now. Heavens! Lin Yuan can't be a humanoid Fei, right? How did he send such a huge giant lava tiger flying with a single punch without getting burned? Even if the left guard official can't feel the actual temperature of the blazing flames with a shield, the reincarnation flame beast is a Diamond X/Fantasy 3 source-type life form. The key is that this elemental source-type life form evolved from the source fire and was nurtured by Lord Zhongzhe. A series of exclamations echoed in the Night Dawn Palace's outer palace. The area with the most exclamations came from the pinnacle faction's Rhine life form, Sheng Yin, who was in the circle of the younger generation of the pinnacle factions and veteran factions. None of the younger generation members brought by their families to participate in the Nix assembly were not geniuses. All of them had suppressed their male peers in the faction they belonged to, and their families had poured a lot of blood and sweat into them. Even if these geniuses were usually pursued by men, they could not help but show their girlish feelings when facing men who were more outstanding. It could be said that the most eye-catching people in the Night Dawn Palace's outer palace were on the martial and civil arenas. Regardless of rank and status, it could be said that the top two in the civil and martial arenas were more valuable than the first in the civil and martial arenas. Lin Yuan and Zhong Zai's looks were also top-notch, and they each had their own merits. Zhong Zai was wearing red half-body armor, and his stern face was filled with battle fanaticism and wildness. Lin Yuan was usually calm, and the beauty contained in his sunny smile could definitely dazzle people's eyes. Coupled with the fresh natural aura on his body, these 24 or 25-year-old geniuses could not help but want to rub Lin Yuan's head. Big sister Sheng Yin, I didn't expect Lord Zhong Zai to suffer a small loss at the beginning. Sheng Yin immediately denied it. A casual test at the beginning of this duel can't prove anything. Zhong Zai's strength is not just this. Although her voice sounded coy, her tone was very serious. Sheng Yin then recalled that 2 years ago, when she was a healing-type spirit chi professional, she had been invited by Gu Lang to help with a mission in a Class 3 swamp dimensional rift. Before participating in the mission, Sheng Yin knew that the purpose of the mission was to capture a snake Medusa. For a dimensional creature like Medusa, no matter how much its grade increased, it was still a half-human dimensional creature. Spirit chi professionals couldn't contract ordinary dimensional lifeforms, but some dimensional lifeforms that had undergone special mutations could be contracted by spirit chi professionals. The snake Medusa was a dimensional lifeform that could be contracted by spirit chi professionals. When the swamp dimensional lifeform, Medusa, had evolved into a snake due to an unknown mutation. It looked roughly the same as an ordinary snake species Fae. However, the snake Medusa had inherited all of Medusa's abilities. It was both powerful and rare. At that time, Gu Lang had placed great importance on this snake Medusa, but who would have thought that this snake Medusa's bloodline was abnormally powerful? Before transforming into a snake, it was already at the pinnacle of Class 3, and the ceiling of the swamp dimensional rift had faintly reached the standard of a suzerain. After transforming into a snake, the Medusa was no longer a dimensional life form. Hence, the Medusa's strength exceeded the pinnacle Class 3 swamp dimensional rift standard. It still wouldn't be repelled by the dimensional rift or cause the dimensional rift to evolve. This was 2 years ago, and at that time, the snake Medusa's suzerain strength wasn't something that she could contend with. At that time, Sheng Yin seemed to have seen a firework that could topple the world. Thousands of flames condensed in the air, and a bright red flash flashed. The suzerain snake Medusa was directly burned into a half-charred state. Finally, Gu Lang stored it in a Fey storage box. That was the first time Sheng Yin had been shocked by the strength of a peer. From then on, Zhong Zai could be said to have become Sheng Yin's idol. However, even with Sheng Yin's vision, she couldn't understand how he had such a strong flame resistance. Even if Zhong Zai hadn't exerted his strength, just the temperature emitted by the Diamond X/Fantasy 3 Reincarnation Flame Beast's flames was not easy to deal with. This flame could cause absolute instant death damage to Fays below Diamond/Fantasy breed. Even if Fays of the same grade as the Reincarnation Flame Beast were roasted by this flame, it was impossible for them to be unscathed. As a creation master, Sheng Yin could be sure that Lin Yuan was not a Fey and did not have a Fey bloodline. This was because Lin Yuan didn't have that kind of Fey's aura at all, nor did he have a beast pattern. It could be said that Lin Yuan was a pure human spirit chi professional, which proved that the strength he was displaying now was all provided by his contracted Fey. It should be one of Lin Yuan's Feys that bestowed him with fire resistance and that shocking strength. Sheng Yin couldn't see too much at once from the collision just now. At that moment, Shengyin heard her little sister's voice again. Big sister Shengyin, I announce that Lin Yuan will be my darling from now on. Lin Yuan's action of turning over in the air and landing on the ground just now was too cool. Upon hearing that, Shengyin's pupils shrank, and she finally realized what was wrong. Lin Yuan's strong flame resistance and monstrous strength could be said to be provided by phase. However, Lin Yuan's combat skills and movement techniques were definitely his own. Could it be that this young Lin Yuan was also a martial arts prodigy? In the era of the Spirit Qi awakening, it was a very stupid thing to spend time honing combat skills and movement techniques. The veteran factions and the top factions' younger generation outside the arena exclaimed one after another, but it didn't affect Lin Yuan and Zhong Zhe, who were standing on the arena at that moment. Although Zhong Zhe would be affected by misfortune during combat and become a battle maniac, it didn't mean that he was irrational. On the contrary, Zhong Zhe's spirit would be highly concentrated during combat, and his mind would become more flexible. When Zhong Zhe launched an attack on Lin Yuan, he knew that Lin Yuan would definitely be able to withstand it. However, he didn't expect Lin Yuan to withstand it in this way and even counterattack. Zhong Zhe liked the feeling of standing next to Lin Yuan and the faint fragrance on his body. Coupled with Zhong Zhe's love for combat, Zhong Zhe felt that it was simply a kind of immortal enjoyment to be able to duel with Lin Yuan. At the same time, Zhong Zhe also became 120% serious and looked at Lin Yuan. Since you said that this kind of flame strength is still far from enough, then the fire is going to heat up soon. The first time was even more intense. End of this chapter. Chapter 874. After saying that, Zhong Zhe ordered the squeaking orange mouse on his shoulder. Sky burning roar, use flame conduction. After saying that, the little orange mouse's body suddenly ignited with a fiery light, and two orange flame marks appeared on top of the little orange mouse's head. One appeared on the reincarnation flame beast, which was struggling to get up after being knocked down by Lin Yuan. In an instant, the temperature on the arena rose, and even Lin Yuan suddenly felt the pressure of this temperature. Sweat immediately seeped out of Lin Yuan's body. However, it was not that Lin Yuan could not endure such heat, and he was not the slightest bit afraid or worried about the sudden increase in heat. Lin Yuan did not use the Princess Silk Dress's function to activate the Myth 3 Ice Flame Law engraved in it and the Gilded Flame Dragon Lysa's Burning Flame Law. Lin Yuan's current fire-type resistance was only a passive bonus of the Princess Silk Dress. After using true data to check the attributes of the Sky Burning Roar and the Reincarnation Flame Beast, Lin Yuan decided not to activate the fire-type law engraved in the Princess Silk Dress to increase his fire-type resistance. Due to the Reincarnation Flame Beast, he and Zhong Zhe were destined to have a protracted battle. Fortunately, Lin Yuan was now a B-rank Spirit Qi professional. If he was still a C-rank Spirit Qi professional, he would be one rank lower than Zhong Zhe. Then, Lin Yuan could only use his ultimate move in this battle. In Lin Yuan's opinion, this battle was also a test of his strength. Not only had he not trained many of his trump cards, but he had not even used them. As a result, Lin Yuan did not have a clear understanding of the strength of his trump cards. This was not a good thing for a Spirit Qi professional. Zhong Zhe's Reincarnation Flame Beast had evolved from the Source Fire, which was similar to his contracted Source Sand. They were both elemental Source-type lifeforms. However, according to true data, the preconditions for the Source Fire and Source Sand's contracts were very different. The Source Fire had devoured a large number of metal spiritual ingredients and relied on the liquid metal to form a viscous lava-like body. The huge tiger-shaped Fey that had just formed from the lava-like body was the ability of the Reincarnation Flame Beast after it used Beast-type attachment and activated the Tiger-type Fey bloodline in its body. At that moment, the giant lava tiger, whose fire-type ability had increased, roared and charged at Lin Yuan again. Just like how Zhongzhe had not unleashed his full strength, Lin Yuan's earlier punch was just a probing attack. The exclusive skill, Spirit Purity Burst, was to gather spirit chi at one point to burst out with damage. The purer the spirit chi was, the higher the spirit purity burst damage would be. The spirit chi in Lin Yuan's body had reached a certain purity. This time, Lin Yuan wasn't stingy with his spiritual power. He circulated a large amount of spiritual power and gathered it on his left fist. Lin Yuan's body reflexively reacted, and his nimble movement technique coupled with tricky angles allowed him to dodge the giant lava tiger's flaming attack. Lin had. And the Lin Yuan flame giant flame tear. Lin Yuan's merciless blow completely destroyed the lava giant tiger's form. The powerful explosive force penetrated the lava giant tiger's body and blasted a hole with squirming liquid lava. At that moment, the giant lava tiger roared furiously. A lava antelope with a sword's horn came out of the hole and charged at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan's right fist seemed to have predicted the future. It had long gathered spiritual power and struck the lava antelope's horn. The reincarnation flame beast's lava antelope was blasted away. The deformed giant lava tiger and lava antelope split again and formed a lava cheetah. Lin Yuan knew that this was the result of the reincarnation flame beast's beast-type attachment and the exclusive skill, flame differentiation. With flame differentiation, as long as the reincarnation flame beast had enough beast-type Fey bloodline, it could continuously offset the damage. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and let his muscles relax. Immediately, he tensed up and leaped high into the air, waving his fist to attack. Lu Jie, who was very familiar with Lin Yuan, could not help but swallow his saliva. He did not expect Lin Yuan, who was usually sunny, to be so fierce when fighting in this way. Zhongzhe paid great attention to Lin Yuan's attack. Although the reincarnation flame beast could offset the damage with its exclusive skill, flame differentiation, Zhongzhe could feel the damage from Lin Yuan's punch. However, Zhongzhe could feel the damage from Lin Yuan's punch. However, even if Zhongzhe commanded the reincarnated flame beast's giant lava tiger, lava antelope, and lava cheetah to dodge his fists, the reincarnated flame beast's giant lava tiger, lava antelope, and lava cheetah Lin Yuan would still use his nimble movement technique to chase after them and attack them. As for the giant lava tiger, lava antelope, and lava cheetah, Lin Yuan easily dodged them with his movement technique. Lin Yuan was not affected by the scorching flames, and the reincarnation flame beast's beast-type individual could not cause an effective physical attack on him. This gave Zhongzhe a headache. Lin Yuan was like a slippery catfish. A series of exchanges happened in the blink of an eye. When Lin Yuan punched a lava rhinoceros, it turned into an irregular lava body and did not split into a new individual. Lin Yuan smiled brightly and said, "It seems like your reincarnation flame beast has absorbed a total of 8 beast-type phase bloodlines. It seems that your reincarnation flame beast has absorbed a total of 8 types of beast-type phase bloodlines." While speaking, Lin Yuan's attacks were still very clean. During the battle, he landed a punch on each of the giant lava beasts. The 8 irregular lava bodies fell on the combat arena's ground and rolled, but they could not condense into a beast form. They were obviously seriously injured. Lin Yuan's spiritual power had also been depleted during the earlier fight. It could be said that Lin Yuan's spiritual power had dried up. Not only did Lin Yuan's punches land on the reincarnated flame beast's body, but they also seemed to hit the hearts of the top and veteran faction's younger generation in Yeyang Palace's outer palace. At this moment, the noisy outer palace of Yeyang Palace was dead silent. Everyone looked at Lin Yuan as if they were looking at an indescribable miracle. Zhongzhe looked at Lin Yuan's grave and stern face with a hint of a smile amidst the fanaticism. He was not worried about the reincarnation flame beast's injuries at all. Each of your punches will consume about 1/20th of a B-rank spirit chi professional's spirit chi. You have a total of 21 punches, so your body should be out of spirit chi now. Reincarnation Flame Beast, use Reincarnation Fire. At that moment, the orange mark on the orange mouse on Zhong Zai's shoulder became brighter. The body of the reincarnated flame beast that had been marked with an orange mark also ignited with a thin layer of orange flame. There was still one more night, so it would be later. End of this chapter. Chapter 875. The moment the orange flames ignited, the lump of lava that couldn't take shape immediately transformed into a giant lava tiger. With a roar from the giant lava tiger, the other 7 lumps of lava shot toward the giant lava tiger and fused into its body. It was as though all of Lin Yuan's previous attacks had been useless. Lin Yuan swung his fist. He had been nurturing phase and had not had the chance to exercise. Now that he had punched out, he felt refreshed. Upon hearing Zhong Zai's words, Lin Yuan replied softly, "You're right. According to the total amount of spirit chi, my body's spirit chi should have dried up after 21 punches." As Lin Yuan spoke, it was as though a seal had been opened on his body. Majestic spirit chi flowed out of Lin Yuan's body and set off a gust of wind on the stage. All of a sudden, Zhong Zai felt his spirit chi circulation speed being suppressed. Zhong Zai frowned and looked at Lin Yuan in disbelief. It's spiritual pressure. When spirit chi was stimulated, the spirit chi professional's body would produce external pressure. However, even a Class A spirit chi professional's spirit chi burst would not be able to produce spiritual pressure that could be felt by others. Right now, Zhong Zai could clearly feel his spirit chi being suppressed. Zhong Zai could not imagine how much spirit chi was circulating in Lin Yuan's body. Due to Zhou Ming's barrier, no one could sense Lin Yuan's spiritual pressure apart from Zhong Zai, who was fighting Lin Yuan on the stage. However, Zhong Zai's words were clearly heard by everyone present. Lin Yuan had considered the pros and cons before activating the spirit chi imprint in his body. Just the sacred source lifeform reward for winning the civil and martial arena was enough for Lin Yuan to activate the spirit chi imprint that he had not used for a long time. Moreover, the civil and martial arena reward was a radiant medal. Today, Lin Yuan was going to let go of everything and fight with all his might. Zhong Zai felt the change in Lin Yuan's body and immediately gave the Reincarnation Flame Beast a new order. Reincarnation Flame Beast, use Beast Vein Fusion. Following Zhong Zai's order, the Reincarnation Flame Beast that had just transformed into a giant lava tiger turned into an irregular lump of lava again. The magma ball wriggled rapidly, and as it wriggled, it grew larger and larger as the fire elemental energy burned. Finally, it condensed into a giant beast with the characteristics of 8 phase. The moment the giant beast condensed, it pounced straight at Lin Yuan. Since Lin Yuan had removed the spirit chi imprint, he had plenty of spirit chi to squander. This time, he didn't conserve it and gathered a massive amount of spirit chi on his fists. This caused his 2 arms to be vaguely wrapped in materialized spirit energy, and the wrapping of spirit energy caused the air around his fists to become distorted. However, just as Lin Yuan rushed toward the Reincarnation Flame Beast that had gathered 8 types of Fey bloodlines, he clearly felt the temperature of the Reincarnation Flame Beast's flames rising. If he still did not activate the princess's dress at this time, what awaited him would be a large area of burns on his body. Thus, when he rushed toward the Reincarnation Flame Beast, he quietly activated the princess's skirt. After Lin Yuan activated Princess Luo Kun, he felt as though he had returned to the feeling when he had just ascended to the combat arena. He couldn't even feel the heat in the surrounding air. This made Lin Yuan involuntarily sigh in his heart. As expected of the Myth 3 law power. Just as Lin Yuan collided with the Reincarnation Flame Beast that had gathered 8 types of Fey bloodlines, he heard Zhong Zai shout. Reincarnation Flame Beast, Flame Body Boil. Zhong Zai had also contracted a sacred source life form, so when Lin Yuan activated Princess Luo Kun, he could faintly feel the sacred source aura emerging from Lin Yuan's body. Zhongzhe wasn't surprised, as he had already guessed that Lin Yuan had contracted a sacred source life form. The fact that Lin Yuan had used a sacred source life form so quickly made Zhongzhe feel at ease. Zhongzhe would then use his Creation Master ability to investigate Lin Yuan's sacred source lifeform's functions. Following Zhongzhe's command for Flame Body Boil, the reincarnation Flame Beast's fire elemental energy suddenly spewed out, but Lin Yuan was still unaffected. However, the reincarnation Flame Beast seemed to have turned into a hedgehog as it spewed out a large amount of tiny lava balls from its body. These tiny balls of lava cooled in the air, forming all kinds of weapons that were burning red hot. Seeing this, Lin Yuan jumped back and abruptly pulled away. Then, he used all kinds of strange movement techniques to move around in the rain of weapons, occasionally swinging his fists. In such a rain of weapons, Lin Yuan could be said to be unscathed. At that moment, Lin Yuan didn't notice anything strange. However, everyone, including Zhongzhe, saw a faint image of a woman appear on Lin Yuan's body. This woman's image was nearly 10 meters tall. The woman in the image had her eyes closed, and her skirt fluttered in the wind. She stretched her arms forward as if to hug Lin Yuan. The woman's image made a gesture of wholeheartedly protecting him. The appearance of this woman's image broke the temporary peace in Yeyang Palace's outer palace. This is definitely a fucking sacred source life form. Could it be that this sacred source life form allows Lin Yuan to be unscathed in this rain of weapons? After a series of exclamations, the younger generation spectators in Yeyang Palace's outer palace began to discuss among themselves. Gu Lang and Sheng Yin were deep in thought. Both of them realized that they couldn't rely on their Creation Master strength to investigate the sacred source lifeform's abilities. All prying eyes seemed to be blocked by the thousands of strong and weak forces on the sacred source lifeform's body. The sacred source lifeform's aura could not be blocked by Zhua Ming's barrier. Gu Lang could confirm that Lin Yuan's body definitely had the sacred source lifeform's aura that had just appeared. However, Lin Yuan's fire elemental resistance and exquisite movement techniques had already been displayed. He didn't just summon the sacred source life form. Unlike Gu Lang, who was deep in thought outside the battlefield, Zhongzhe, who was inside the battlefield, had already seen Lin Yuan dodge the rain of weapons. Then, he summoned a fairy source-type life form with azure blue flames on its body. The moment the fairy source-type life form appeared, the azure flames around the fairy suddenly retracted. Finally, it gathered in the gem on the fairy's forehead. At the same time, the reincarnation flame beast used the reincarnation ritual and activated its second exclusive skill, Lava Demon God, that had been sealed. The reincarnated flame beast seemed to have turned into a volcanic crater, continuously spewing out lava. Strange beastly shadows appeared from the lava from time to time, and they continuously bombarded Lin Yuan's half of the stage. While the reincarnation flame beast executed its exclusive skill, Lava Demon God, to attack indiscriminately, the azure blue gem on the little fairy's forehead that Zhongzhe had just summoned suddenly shot a gorgeous ray at Zhongzhe. It didn't give Lin Yuan any time to dodge, and he couldn't dodge in the rain. But the next scene made Zhongzhe's jaw drop. Lin Yuan, who had been hit by all the moves, was unharmed, but the fairy source-type life form, the blue venom flame puppet, that he had just summoned, was severely injured after launching its attack. Its spirited blue eyes lost their luster, and the two pairs of wings on its back stopped flapping. It fell from the sky onto the dark crystal floor of the stage. The third time. End of this chapter. Chapter 876. Zhongzhe was stunned for a moment when he saw the blue poison flame puppet's blue eyes lose their luster and the two pairs of wings on its back no longer flapping. Then, his pupils constricted as he looked at Lin Yuan. The fairy source-type life form, the blue poison flame puppet, could be said to be a special offense-type source-type life-form that Zhongzhe had always valued. The azure blue flames on the blue poison flame puppet's body contained an extremely large amount of fire poison. The fire poison could immediately fill the target cells with fire elements and evaporate the water in the cells, causing the target to be in a dehydrated state. The fierce fire poison would burn the dehydrated target into charcoal. At the same time, the blue poison flame puppet was also very good at spiritual attacks. What the blue poison flame puppet had shot through the gemstone in its forehead was its spiritual power attack ability, the blue rose ray. However, after the blue rose ray hit Lin Yuan, the blue poison flame puppet had suffered a backlash from releasing the blue rose ray, and its spiritual power had been severely injured. This was why the blue poison flame puppet had immediately entered a near-death state after releasing an attack. A spiritual backlash would only occur when an individual with weaker spiritual power attacked an individual with stronger spiritual power. Zhongzhe's fairy source-type blue poison flame puppet might only be Diamond 8/Fantasy 2, and its grade and quality were not as high as the reincarnated flame beast. However, as a fire and spiritual type fairy source-type life form, the blue poison flame puppet's spiritual power was more than 3 times that of the reincarnated flame beast. By relying on its spiritual power, the blue poison flame puppet could easily severely injure the reincarnated flame beast. In order to have such a strong backlash, Lin Yuan's spiritual power had to be at least 5 times higher than the blue poison flame puppet. However, in Zhongzhe's opinion, as a spirit chi professional, Lin Yuan's spiritual power could not be so strong. If Lin Yuan had such a strong spiritual power, he could contract hundreds or thousands of fays and nurture them. In that case, Lin Yuan only needed to summon all his contracted fays during the battle. Who could beat him if they ganged up on him? Such a huge spiritual power had already violated the upper limit of the human genetic model's spiritual power talent. At the same time, the moment the fairy source-type blue poison flame puppet attacked, its spiritual power would connect with Lin Yuan's spiritual power as the blue rose ray hit him. The moment it connected with Lin Yuan's spiritual power, the blue poison flame puppet entered an unprecedented state of fear. It was as if the blue poison flame puppet, as a subordinate, had unknowingly offended its superior. Zhongzhe's contracted blue poison flame puppet was in existence with an extremely noble bloodline among fairy source-type lifeforms. From the moment it hatched, it had 2 pairs of wings on its back, which meant it had 4 wings on its back. Apart from the rumored myth breed that had grown a 3rd pair of wings, the blue venom flame puppet's bloodline could be said to be the pinnacle of fairy source-type lifeforms. Even Zhongzhe's own master, Chef Supreme, had said that if the blue venom flame puppet continued to be nurtured, there was a high chance that it would grow a 3rd pair of wings. Fairy source-type lifeforms were a kind of rather special life form. When facing dragon species pressure and phoenix species pressure that came from phase bloodlines, they had a very strong resistance. In fact, it could basically ignore the phase bloodline pressure. However, when it came to the fairy bloodline, the fairy source-type lifeforms with a high bloodline had a strong control over the fairy source-type lifeforms with a low bloodline. In the previous battles, Zhongzhe had many advantages in this aspect. Zhongzhe secretly guessed in his heart, could Lin Yuan have a fairy source-type lifeform with 3 pairs of wings? After having this thought, Zhongzhe felt that it was rather nonsensical. Lin Yuan was now a B-rank spirit chi professional. Even if his contracted phase upper limit was the same as Zhongzhe's, it would at most be a Diamond X/Fantasy V Fei. In history, he had never heard of a fairy source-type life form below myth breed being able to grow 3 pairs of wings. Zhongzhe's master, Chef Supreme, had done a lot of research on fairy source-type lifeforms, so Zhongzhe knew the importance of a fairy source-type lifeform's bloodline more than anyone else. If Lin Yuan really had a fairy source-type lifeform with 3 pairs of wings below myth breed, its value would be even more precious than an uncontracted sacred source lifeform. Not only that, but Zhong Zhe could also determine that Lin Yuan had a very strong resistance to poison based on how unscathed he was. Fire poison damage was completely different from fire damage. One was poison damage that evolved from fire elements, while the other was pure fire damage. Ever since Zhong Zhe had become a combat class spirit chi professional, he had never felt so depressed in a duel. As a spirit chi professional with an affinity for fire, Zhong Zhe's contracted phase were all fire-type phase due to the limitations of his talent. After his specialty, fire-type attacks, was restricted, Zhong Zhe changed his attack method and suffered a greater loss. After Zhong Zhe probed Lin Yuan's sacred source life form, he realized that his life as a creation master seemed to have been in vain. This was not the first time Zhong Zhe had tried to spy on someone else's sacred source life form. He had even been able to get a glimpse of his Chef Supreme's sacred source life form. However, Lin Yuan's sacred source life form had been blocked by thousands of strong and weak energies, so he could not even get a glimpse of it. Zhong Zhe secretly guessed that Lin Yuan's resistance to spiritual damage was very likely due to his sacred source life form's ability. Unlike Zhong Zhe's grave expression, Lin Yuan had a strange expression as he looked at the blue poison flame puppet that was on the verge of death. Zhong Zhe's attack just now had not been the slightest problem. The combination of moves had reached a near-perfect level. Even if Lin Yuan had extraordinary combat skills and movement techniques, he would still not be able to dodge it. The mistake was that Zhong Zhe had used a spiritual attack on him. As a functional Fey, genius did not have any combat abilities. However, it had massive spiritual energy that could memorize all the knowledge in the world. Such spiritual energy was not something that one or two spiritual-type phase attacks could shake. Lin Yuan's spiritual energy and genius spiritual energy were connected according to genius spiritual expansion ability. The blue poison flame puppet's spiritual attack had only caused a small wave in Lin Yuan's spiritual sea. The waves did not roll far before they silently melted into the sea. Lin Yuan did not feel the fire poison damage from the blue poison flame puppet's blue rose ray. If he had known that the blue poison flame puppet's attack contained fire poison damage, Lin Yuan would definitely thank himself for upgrading his Myth 2 Vicious Poison Law to Myth 3. Zhong Zhe's sudden attack had allowed Lin Yuan to indirectly destroy one of Zhong Zhe's phase, which was definitely good news for Lin Yuan. First, even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 877. The younger generation of the veteran and peak forces were also stunned by this sudden turn of events. He did not understand why Zhong Zhe's fairy source-type life form would be so heavily injured. Seeing this scene, Gu Lang's expression became more and more solemn. Gu Lang took a deep look at Lin Yuan, but the more he looked, the more he felt that Lin Yuan was shrouded in layers of fog, making it impossible to see him clearly. The blue poison flame puppet was a fairy source-type life form that Zhong Zhe had contracted and nurtured in the past 2 years. Gu Lang had fought Zhong Zhe a few times and had suffered quite a bit at the hands of the blue poison flame puppet. Gu Lang's thorny problem had become Lin Yuan's method to restrain Zhong Zhe. Through this unforeseen event, Gu Lang also came to the same conclusion as Zhong Zhe. He felt that Lin Yuan's sacred source lifeform's function was related to spiritual energy protection. With a wave of his hand, Zhong Zhe recalled the dying blue venom flame puppet and the reincarnated flame beast into his spiritual space. At that moment, the blue venom flame puppet had entered a near-death state and could no longer fight. The lava demon god state's reincarnation flame beast was also immune to Lin Yuan's attacks. Allowing the reincarnated flame beast to maintain its lava demon god state would only waste the spiritual energy in Zhong Zhe's body. After recalling the blue poison flame puppet and the reincarnation flame beast back into the spiritual spatial zone, Zhong Zhe looked at Lin Yuan and said, "That's right. You are very strong. However, I am going to use my ultimate move." Zhong Zhe's tone did not become heavy because of the battle. Instead, it was filled with a sense of joy. This was something that even Zhongzhe himself did not feel. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan replied with a bright smile. Just like you, I'm going to use my ultimate move. As he spoke, he looked at the sky-burning centipede on Zhongzhe's shoulder and could not help but feel a little regretful. Under true data, the burning sky centipede's platinum skill, Group Flame Heart Flame, was a skill that targeted the mind and soul. Standing on Zhongzhe's shoulder, the sky-burning Ho did not join the battle. Instead, it cast a support skill, Flame Conduction, on the reincarnated flame beast. He speculated that this heaven-burning centipede should be one of Zhongzhe's trump cards. If the burning sky centipede were to use the platinum skill group Flaming Heart Flame on him, it would be countered by Lin Huang's mental strength. No matter how strong the burning sky centipede was, he would be eliminated. This way, he could directly destroy one of Zhongzhe's trump cards. With the lesson of the fairy source-type life form, the blue venom flame puppet, Zhongzhe would probably not let the burning heaven centipede use the group Flame Heart Flame on him again. However, this was also good. This burning sky centipede's existence could let him deeply feel how powerful the young generation's pinnacle strength was. At that moment, Zhongzhe turned around and said to Zhuo Ming. Senior Zhuo Ming, the attack will be out of my control, so I'll have to trouble you. Zhuo Ming's expression became even more serious. Lord Zhongzhe, I will take good care of the situation in the arena. I will act immediately according to my judgment. The first half of Zhuo Ming's voice was normal, but in the second half, his voice changed. It had a hoarse and cold quality to it. Lin Yuan and Zhongzhe didn't sense the change in Zhuo Ming's aura because of the barrier. However, the younger generation of the top factions and veteran factions outside the arena felt as if a new world was quietly born in Yiyang Palace's inner palace. This newly born world was filled with desolation, as if all living things in this world were about to decay and decay. When they looked at Zhuo Ming again, they realized that Zhuo Ming, who originally had a human appearance, had a thick layer of earthen yellow armor. Fine and sharp thorns grew out of the armor, and a long tail curled up to the top of Zhuo Ming's head appeared behind him. Just by looking at this thick and long tail, one could feel the terrifying power contained within. It was as if the power of the tail could shatter the desolation world that had quietly descended in Yiyang Palace's outer palace. Although Lin Yuan couldn't feel Zhuo Ming's aura, he noticed the changes on Zhuo Ming's body. Upon seeing Zhuo Ming's transformation, Lin Yuan immediately knew that Zhuo Ming had a fae that could possess him. Lin Yuan had seen spirit chi professionals with faes that could possess them before, and Xiaofan was one of them. Upon seeing Zhuo Ming's transformation, Lin Yuan let out a sigh of relief because he was about to use an unpredictable power. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard Zhongzhe give an order to the Burning Sky Centipede. Burning Sky Centipede, use the exclusive skill, Exceptional Flame 8 Refinements. Upon hearing Zhongzhe's order, the Burning Sky Centipede on Zhongzhe's shoulder suddenly leaped into the sky. With this leap, golden bristles grew on the Burning Sky Centipede's body that looked like an orange rat. After these golden bristles grew, they immediately ignited with 8 different colored flames. Immediately after, the 8 flames entered the Burning Sky Centipede's mouth as it sucked in all of a sudden. Immediately after, the 8 colored flames on the Burning Sky Centipede's body seemed to have fused together and turned into a magnificent glazed color. Immediately after, the Burning Sky Centipede opened its mouth and spat out a bundle of intertwined flames at Lin Yuan. At that moment, someone below the arena suddenly shouted, "Fuck, it's actually 8 kinds of high-grade exceptional flames. It's actually 8 kinds of high-grade exceptional flames." Even a suzerain fae wouldn't be able to withstand the damage from 8 kinds of high-grade exceptional flames. As Zhongzhe's opponent, Lin Yuan naturally saw what the 8 flames on the Burning Sky Centipede's back were. Facing the menacing flame attack, Lin Yuan planned to test his ethereal jellyfish's diamond ability, Spatial Shift. Lin Yuan did not summon the ethereal jellyfish. If he did, the ethereal jellyfish's chubby body would probably be roasted into jellyfish jerky by the arena's high temperature. Therefore, he relied on his body to casually execute spatial transference. However, the ethereal jellyfish was a Diamond X/Legend Fae and had yet to become a fantasy breed. In other words, the ethereal jellyfish's strength was only equivalent to a Platinum X/Fantasy I Fae. Even if the ethereal jellyfish's spatial shift had a strong protective effect against elemental damage, it could circle out the space that was purely filled with elemental energy within a certain range and transfer the space to another dimension. However, there was a limit to the elemental energy that the ethereal jellyfish's spatial shift could circle out. If there was too much elemental energy, the space would be broken. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not release the ethereal jellyfish's spatial shift once. Facing the burning sky centipede's menacing attack formed by the fusion of two Class 8 exceptional flames, Lin Yuan waved his hand and released 30 spatial shifts. Anyway, Lin Yuan had stimulated the spirit qi imprint, and he had plenty of spiritual power in his body that could not be used up. Now, Lin Yuan perfectly interpreted what it meant to have spirit qi and be willful. Under everyone's gaze, Zhongzai's two high-grade exceptional flames attack was like a fat pig thrown into the sea in front of Lin Yuan, immediately disappearing without a trace. The second one was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 878. Before everyone could be surprised, the heaven-burning centipede's next attack arrived in front of Lin Yuan. When Lin Yuan had checked the heaven-burning centipede's true data, he knew that its exclusive skill, 8 refinements of exceptional flame, was to use 8 different flames to combine and increase the damage 8 times. Therefore, Lin Yuan was already mentally prepared. The number of times Lin Yuan released the ethereal jellyfish's diamond spatial transfer kept multiplying. 30 times, 60 times, 120 times, 240 times, 480 times, 960 times, 1920 times, 3840 times. The heaven-burning centipede's 8 refinements of exceptional flame's 8 attacks were like flowers in a mirror and the moon in the water. Even Zhongzai's expression turned sluggish, and he looked at Lin Yuan with eyes full of disbelief. The younger generation of the top factions and veteran factions outside the arena could no longer hold it in and shouted Lin Yuan's name. Lin Yuan was strong, and so was Zhongzai. However, Zhongzai's strength had always been traceable, and the Fae's abilities could also be seen clearly. However, Lin Yuan's series of actions had broken the original understanding of the younger generation. They did not expect that a battle could be fought like this. If Lin Yuan's current strength was given by Faes, the younger generation of the top factions could not help but think in their hearts. If Lin Yuan summoned these Faes, how powerful would they be? After all, when a spirit qi professional used an ability without summoning Faes, the ability's effect would be greatly reduced. If Lin Yuan knew what the younger generation of the veteran factions and top factions were thinking, he would probably laugh awkwardly. If he had summoned Little Black, Genius, and the ethereal jellyfish, Little Black, Genius, and the ethereal jellyfish would have been turned into ashes by Zhongzai's probing attack. The only reason he was able to persevere in the arena until now was because of the resistance provided by the Princess Robe's law. This resistance would not be added to Lin Yuan's phase through the contract. Although Lin Yuan's method of turning the 8 refinements of exceptional flame's damage into nothingness looked a little shocking, only Lin Yuan knew the pain. Even if he activated the spirit qi imprint, the nearly 7,600 spatial transfers had basically exhausted the accumulated spiritual power in the spirit qi imprint. Lin Yuan did not have any excess spiritual power to waste. After a brief daze, Zhongzai stretched out his palm and stretched forward. A scarlet color appeared on Zhongzai's palm, and Lin Yuan immediately sensed the sacred source's aura. At that moment, Zhongzai looked up and instructed the heaven-burning roar. Land of Fire Fantasy. As soon as the words Fire Fantasy Village were uttered, the sky-burning centipede let out a roar that resounded through the outer palace of the Night Palace. Balls of strange flames gushed out from the heaven-burning hose body. These strange flames turned into colorful bricks and tiles in the air. Between the bricks and tiles, it was as if the entire martial arena had been forged into a majestic city made of flames. Magnificent flame flowers swayed in the air in the city. Lin Yuan knew that each flame flower was a flame characteristic left behind after a strange flame had been absorbed. However, the burning sky centipede's exclusive skill, Fire Fantasy Town, was filled with tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of fire characteristics. The characteristics of these flames intertwined together, forming the embryonic form of a world of flames. Lin Yuan, who was in the Fire Fantasy Town, still felt an indescribable heat and burning pain even after activating the Princess Dress's Cold Flame Law and the Gilded Flame Dragon Lysa's Burning Flame Law. Lin Yuan's skin ached under the roasting of the fire elements. Under the roasting of the fire element, Lin Yuan could feel his sweat exuding a strong smell of blood. At that moment, Zhongzhe was like a god in the world of flames. As they watched Lin Yuan's skin continuously ooze blood, everyone felt that Lin Yuan was going to stop here. On one hand, Lin Yuan was too young, and on the other hand, his sacred source life form had been activated. However, this sacred source life form could not protect Lin Yuan as dutifully as the arms that were hugging him. At that moment, everyone saw Lin Yuan reach forward, just like Zhongzhe. However, Lin Yuan did not spread his palm forward. Instead, he made a grasping motion. Everyone saw the woman's illusory figure behind Lin Yuan suddenly become solid, and the woman's closed eyes quietly opened. The moment the woman opened her eyes, the 10-meter-tall woman's phantom behind Lin Yuan disappeared. Immediately after, a slender sword appeared in Lin Yuan's hand. The sword's scabbard depicted the woman in a fluttering dress. The dress seemed to be nurturing a magical world. Looking at the long sword in Lin Yuan's hand, it wasn't just the outer palace that was stirred up. Even the outer palace was stirred up. At that moment, the calm voice was filled with interest and surprise. How exciting! This young fellow has exceeded this old man's expectations. The Moon Empress' eyes flickered, showing that her heart was not calm. As the Moon Empress sat on the throne, Cold Moon and Dark Moon behind her could not see her flickering eyes. Otherwise, they would immediately know that the Moon Empress' heart was in turmoil. Otherwise, her eyes would not have flickered at all. The experts in the inner palace who had contracted a sacred source life form could feel that Lin Yuan's sacred source aura had not changed. Even if the sacred source life form had changed, it was still a sacred source life form. However, the top factions and veteran leaders who had not contracted a sacred source life form were looking at Lin Yuan in shock. At the same time, they secretly cast glances at the Moon Empress. They did not understand how a 17-year-old youth like Lin Yuan could contract two sacred source life forms at the same time. Chef Supreme looked at the Moon Empress with surprise and said, "Moon Empress, you taught your disciple well." When the Moon Empress heard Chef Supreme's words, her expression immediately became strange. She glanced at Chef Supreme, feeling that he was targeting her. Apart from the usual question and answer session that happened once every 2 weeks, the Moon Empress could not remember what else she had taught Lin Yuan. Hence, although Chef Supreme's words were meant to be good, the Moon Empress felt that he was picking on her. Hence, although Chef Supreme's words were meant to be a compliment, the Moon Empress felt that he was picking on her. The Moon Empress looked at Lin Yuan, whose body was bleeding from the roasting, and said to Chef Supreme, "Not like you. Unlike you, all the disciples you've accepted are so worry-free." Chef Supreme's face lit up when he heard that. Chef Supreme thought back to what he had just said and did not feel that there was anything wrong with what he had said. Could it be that the Moon Empress was angry because Lin Yuan did not perform well? On the stage, Zhongzhe raised his hand high. The red color in his palm was like a burning torch in the center of a world of flames. The moment the crimson flame changed, Lin Yuan drew the sacred sword sealed in the scabbard. Third time. End of this chapter. Chapter 879. The bamboo monarch, who had been quietly sitting on the chair in the inner palace, looked at Lin Yuan with an expression of admiration. The bamboo monarch was different from Chef Supreme. Chef Supreme had only seen Lin Yuan in the Radiant Moon Palace a dozen days ago, but the bamboo monarch had already seen Lin Yuan half a year ago in the royal capital's outskirts. At that time, Lin Yuan had been in a sorry state, covered in blood as he stood behind the Moon Empress. He had almost been killed by Cheng Wu. He had looked so young and immature. It had only been half a year, and that immature youth had already grown to such a level? Moon Empress, your disciple's sacred source life form is quite interesting. I can sense that the sacred source life form is only a 2-star life form, but it seems to have more than one function. As one of the 3 Class 5 creation masters, the bamboo monarch's ability to detect sacred source lifeforms was far superior to Zhongzhe and Gu Lang. The bamboo monarch had immediately probed Lin Yuan's sacred source lifeform the moment he activated it. Like the other low-class creation masters, the bamboo monarch could sense that there were thousands of barriers on the surface of Lin Yuan's sacred source lifeform. These barriers prevented the bamboo monarch's spiritual energy from penetrating it. However, when the bamboo monarch activated his comprehended willpower, his willpower evolved into laws, and the laws evolved into a world. The bamboo monarch realized that willpower, laws, and worlds could penetrate the barriers on the surface of Lin Yuan's sacred source life form, so the bamboo monarch did the same. However, after breaking through a few hundred weak barriers, the bamboo monarch realized that his world power had encountered a thick layer of obstruction. This thick barrier was even more solid than the weak barriers from before. However, it was easy for the bamboo monarch to use the world power to break through this barrier. However, the bamboo monarch was not sure if his invasive probing would affect Lin Yuan. If his probing really affected Lin Yuan, the Moon Empress wouldn't let him off. Therefore, the bamboo monarch suppressed his curiosity and chose to ask the Moon Empress instead. The Moon Empress did not answer the bamboo monarch's question. Instead, she changed the topic. Chef Supreme's disciple's sacred source lifeform has already reached 3-star and is at the critical point of 4-star. He only needs an opportunity to break through 4-star and transform from the infant stage into the growth stage. I believe that Zhongzhe's battle with Lin Yuan is a good opportunity. The Moon Empress did not wish to discuss Lin Yuan's sacred source lifeform with the bamboo monarch. The woman that had appeared behind Lin Yuan was his sacred source lifeform, and the sword that the woman had turned into was also his sacred source lifeform. These 2 completely different sacred source lifeforms had the same sacred source aura, so they were definitely the same type of sacred source lifeform. This meant that Lin Yuan's sacred source lifeform had 2 forms, which the Moon Empress had never encountered before. When the Moon Empress had seen him in the Radiant Moon Palace, she had discovered that he had the ability to hide his spirit chi professional rank. Now that he thought about it, Lin Yuan's ability to hide his identity as a spirit chi professional should be the same as a sacred source lifeform's ability to block detection. In addition, he had displayed fire and poison elemental immunity, spiritual protection, and his current attacking stance. The Moon Empress did not know what was going on without carefully inspecting Lin Yuan's sacred source lifeform. However, the Moon Empress had always adhered to a principle when it came to educating Lin Yuan. It was fine as long as one knew the trump card, and there was no need to reveal it to others. This was also why the Moon Empress had never asked about Lin Yuan's strength. Just now, the Moon Empress had sensed the bamboo monarch probing Lin Yuan. It was fortunate that the bamboo monarch didn't continue probing after encountering an obstruction. Otherwise, the Moon Empress would have already made a move on the bamboo monarch and interrupted his probing. Chef Supreme was originally puzzled as to why the Moon Empress had suddenly rebuked him. However, when he recalled the Moon Empress' temperament, he didn't pay much attention to it. Upon hearing the Moon Empress praise, Chef Supreme Zhongzhe said with a smile, "If Zhongzhe can increase the Sacred Source Lifeform star rank in this battle, it will evolve from the infant stage to the adult stage and obtain new abilities. Then I really have to thank Lin Yuan for creating such a good opportunity for Zhongzhe." Lu Jie could feel the sacred source aura from Lin Yuan and Zhongzhe's bodies. He could feel the sacred source lifeforms in his body stirring. Based on his conversation with the sacred source lifeform, Lu Jie knew that Zhongzhe's sacred source lifeform star was higher than Lin Yuan's. Gu Lang turned to look at Lu Jie as the sacred source lifeform in his body stirred restlessly. Zhongzhe's sacred source lifeform is very strong. It's a pure combat-type sacred source lifeform. My sacred source lifeform has already reached Class 4 and obtained its second ability. However, in terms of sacred source lifeforms, my sacred source lifeform is completely suppressed by Zhongzhe's sacred source lifeform. Senior Zhuo Ming will be busy from now on. As Gu Lang spoke, Zhongzhe's voice sounded in the arena. Zhongzhe's voice was filled with solemnity and even a hint of holiness. Heaven's crimson flame heavenly country. As Zhongzhe shouted, the flames floating in the air of the fire fantasy country seemed to be on a pilgrimage. The characteristics of each flame condensed into a resplendent beam of light that shot toward the crimson flame in Zhongzhe's hand. The flames floating in the air of the fire fantasy country were the residual characteristics of an alien flame after it was absorbed. After the flames absorbed the fire characteristics of the origin, the remaining parts became vigorous fire elements that nourished the bricks and tiles of the fire fantasy country. Every brick and tile of the fire fantasy country was indeed made of alien flames. After these alien flames absorbed the fire elements left behind by the flames started to move. The fire from the bricks and tiles began to jump, and finally, the jumping fire turned into a dancing flame. The temperature of the fire fantasy country suddenly increased by more than one-fold. Zhuo Ming sensed that the temperature in the fire fantasy country had risen to Lin Yuan's limit and was about to protect him. Zhuo Ming felt as though Lin Yuan had instantly turned into a towering mountain standing in the world of flames. It was as though the mountain was pure green, untainted by 10,000 fires. A majestic vitality suddenly gushed out of Lin Yuan's body and swam in it. After the rising temperature of the flames destroyed Lin Yuan's body turned pale. After the rising temperature of the flames destroyed Lin Yuan's body, the majestic vitality allowed Lin Yuan's burned body to regenerate. Lin Yuan had already activated the Jasmine Lily's exclusive skill, Life Imprint. Lin Yuan sighed in his heart. The Cold Snow Pine's Cold Flame Law is a Myth 3 law and has the characteristics of ice and fire. But the Cold Flame Law's ice element characteristic is obviously higher than the fire element's resistance. Lin Yuan felt that if the princess's skirt was engraved with a pure Myth 3 fire element law, he would not have had to activate the Jasmine Lily's exclusive skill, Life Imprint. The first was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 880. Zhuo Ming, who had already entered the arena, retreated awkwardly when he saw Lin Yuan's skin, which had been damaged by the flames, and immediately recovered. Zhuo Ming felt that he had learned something new. This big shot's disciple really had endless trump cards. Every trump card could have a serious impact on the balance of the battle. Suddenly, Lin Yuan felt the exceptional fire in the fire fantasy country under his feet start to become violent. The crimson color in Zhongzhe's hand was like a singularity, and its gravitational force shattered half of the bricks and tiles that constructed the fire fantasy country. The shattered bricks and tiles poured into the crimson color, causing it to expand in Zhongzhe's palm and evolve into a kingdom of crisscrossing crimson flames. After this crimson kingdom was formed, Zhongzhe shook his wrist and threw it toward Lin Yuan. While Zhongzhe was condensing the Crimson Kingdom, Lin Yuan had used Morbius True Data to examine Zhongzhe's sacred source lifeform. Zhongzhe's sacred source lifeform was called the Heaven's Crimson Fire. Its current function was to condense the fire characteristics and fire elements in the strange flames into the fire law in an instant. Zhongzhe's red flame heavenly country contained a complete fire law formed by the characteristics of nearly 100,000 flames. Although this rule could only be condensed for a split second, it truly existed. In this age where the younger generation was still controlling fantasy breed phase, Zhongzhe's use of the law could be said to be a dimensional reduction attack. But to Lin Yuan, Princess was the true expert at playing with willpower and laws. Princess, who had always played with willpower and laws, now had a new toy at the level of the Dark Death world. After weighing the pros and cons, Lin Yuan injected the Myth 3 Nightmare Dream Law inscribed in the princess dress into the sacred sword in his hand. This was the first time Lin Yuan used the princess sacred sword's function, the sacred sword's tip. As Lin Yuan injected the Nightmare Dream Law into the sacred sword, the ordinary sacred sword in his hand suddenly turned grayish-black, and a grayish-black mist rose from the sword tip. The mist seemed to hide a bat that was waiting for an opportunity to suck people's sweet dreams. Immediately after, he held the sword in a reverse grip and shook it. All the grayish-black swamp in the sword in his hand gathered at the tip of the sword. If the scarlet light in Zhongzhe's palm was the core of the fire illusion country, then the sacred source lifeform's Heaven's Crimson Fire Kingdom transcended the fire illusion country. In that case, the grayish-black color entangled on the tip of Lin Yuan's sword could already compete with the red flame heaven formed by the Heaven's Crimson Fire in Zhongzhe's palm. In the fog, a faintly discernible dark bat was howling at the entire world of flames. Then, he swung his sword and struck out the Myth 3 Nightmare Law condensed at the tip of the sword. The grayish-black mist collided with the kingdom of fire that Zhongzhe had thrown over. The grayish-black mist and the crimson mist alternated, making it impossible for the younger generation of Yiyang Palace, including Gu Lang, to see the situation on the stage. After a long time, the grayish-black and scarlet colors cancelled each other out. Lin Yuan and Zhongzhe stood there, panting heavily. It was obvious that they had suffered quite a bit from the battle just now. The veteran faction prodigies and top faction prodigies who were spectating all had their mouths wide open. They stared in disbelief at the two people standing on the stage. An elegant-looking girl standing beside Sheng Yin could not help but curse at this moment. Fuck, is this the damage that a fucking youngster can do? Are these two monsters? The fight between Lin Yuan and Zhongzhe had been too impactful, causing the outer palace to be in a dead silence. This made the girl's ridicule even more obvious. The elegant girl next to Sheng Yin also reacted at that moment. She was so embarrassed that she wanted to dig a hole in the ground. It was fine if the girls complained about it in private, but it was a different story if they said it in public. It could be said that although her exclamation just now was not malicious, it was already equivalent to disrespecting Zhongzhe and Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan was fine, but Zhongzhe was Chef Supreme's disciple. She had said that Zhongzhe was not a human and that Zhongzhe was a monster. If someone with ulterior motives were to make a fuss about it, he would be in for a hard time. The elegant girl next to Sheng Yin secretly glanced around and realized that no one was looking at her. Only then did they heave a sigh of relief. Their gazes were fixed on the two shining men on the stage. She saw a few top faction young masters, who she had always thought were very handsome, gaping at the two people on the stage. The girl suddenly felt that there was nothing to be fascinated about with these top faction young masters. The girl continued to look at Lin Yuan and Zhongzhe, who were in the combat arena. This glance made the girl feel conflicted. Both of them were so outstanding, and she did not know who to like. But if these two people could be together, it seemed like, just as a mysterious smile appeared on the girl's face, she heard a coquettish voice beside her ear. "Qianhui, are you hungry?" wipe your saliva. Zhuang Qianhui hurriedly closed her mouth and subconsciously sucked, but she did not expect to let out a slurping sound. At that moment, the majestic vitality in Lin Yuan's body was flowing rapidly, helping Lin Yuan repair his damaged body. The aftermath of the grayish-black and crimson collision had dissipated, and he looked evenly matched with Zhongzhe. However, Lin Yuan knew that he was the one at a disadvantage in the collision. During the collision, his body was constantly being eroded by the fire law's power. Thanks to the princess robe's fire resistance and the massive vitality, he had survived. Logically speaking, Zhongzhe's sacred source life form, the heaven's crimson fire, relied on nearly 100,000 fire characteristics and fire elemental energy to form the fire law. It was at most at Myth I. Even with the Burning Sky Ho's exclusive skill, Fire Fantasy Town, which doubled its power, it would not reach Myth II. On the other hand, the Nightmare Dream Law that Lin Yuan used was a Myth III existence. Logically speaking, the grayish-black color should crush the scarlet color. However, the Princess Robe's law was very different from the Heaven's Crimson Fire's law. What Lin Yuan had just unleashed was not the complete Nightmare Law but the Myth III Nightmare Law's energy. After a period of charging, Lin Yuan could use the Myth III Nightmare Law to unleash such an energy attack again. Zhongzhe's sacred source life form, the Heaven's Crimson Fire, had condensed a complete law, but Zhongzhe had sacrificed it. The explosive power produced by sacrificing the law was not on the same level as simply using the law's energy. The second was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 881. He finally knew the damage he could cause when he used the Myth III law engraved in the princess robe to launch a blow. Each attack could reach the level of a suzerain/Myth I phase all-out attack. Although the power was slightly weaker than Lin Yuan had expected, Lin Yuan was still very satisfied. After all, this attack could be used repeatedly after the cooldown. Lin Yuan had considered it before deciding to use the Nightmare Law. The Myth III laws engraved in the princess dress were the Vicious Poison Law, the Cold Flame Law, and the Nightmare Law. Lin Yuan could use these three laws to cause damage to Zhongzhe. However, after using the energy within the laws, Lin Yuan would not be able to enjoy the resistance of the laws. If the Cold Flame Law were to be unleashed, Lin Yuan would probably be roasted into pieces the moment he unleashed this attack. Lin Yuan was also worried about using the Vicious Poison Law because the blue venom flame puppet that Zhongzhe had just summoned had the ability to use fire poison. Although the blue venom flame puppet had entered a near-death state and been put away by Zhongzhe, Lin Yuan did not dare to guarantee that Zhongzhe would not have other ways to heal the blue venom flame puppet and let it continue fighting. Or perhaps Zhongzhe had other fays that could use poison that he had not summoned. Therefore, after some consideration, using the Nightmare Law was Lin Yuan's best choice. At this moment, Zhongzhe, who was on the stage, suddenly entered a strange state. He closed his eyes tightly. After Zhongzhe entered this state, the Saint Genesis aura on his body abruptly changed, becoming even denser than before. However, the process of this sacred source aura change was like a blooming flower bud. It still needed some time for it to fully bloom. Upon seeing this, Zhuo Ming's expression tensed up. Zhuo Ming could sense that Zhongzhe's sacred source life form had entered a state of metamorphosis and growth. For a sacred source life form to increase its star grade at each growth stage, it only needed to accumulate the required resources according to the sacred source life form's characteristics. However, for a sacred source life form to metamorphose and grow, it was no longer a problem that could be solved by simply accumulating resources. It also needed an opportunity. This opportunity was very rare, just like how spirit chi professionals needed fate to comprehend a willpower rune. Once the opportunity to descend was missed due to some reason, who knew how long it would take for the opportunity to descend again? And Zhongzhe was currently in this opportunity. If Lin Yuan attacked Zhongzhe now, Zhongzhe, who was in a state of epiphany, would not be able to fight back. Lin Yuan could easily become the champion of the civil and martial arena, but at the same time, Zhongzhe would lose this rare opportunity. The rules of the martial arena were decided by the 13 Majesties. A competition was a competition, and it emphasized absolute fairness. It was impossible for them to stop midway because of what had happened to Zhongzhe. Thus, the current situation put Zhuo Ming in a difficult position. The supreme chef of the inner palace of Yeyang Palace also stood up from his chair. Zhongzhe's sacred source life form, the Heaven Scarlet Fire, had already reached 3 stars a long time ago and was in the process of evolving from its infancy stage to its growth stage. However, he had not found a suitable opportunity and had been stuck for more than a year. For a supreme genius like Zhongzhe, who had always been on the road to becoming stronger, a year's time was simply not something he could afford to waste. Supreme Chef was ready to stop the competition on behalf of Zhongzhe. In Supreme Chef's opinion, compared to an uncontracted sacred source life form and a radiant light metal, Zhongzhe's crimson heaven flame was more important. At that moment, Supreme Chef saw Lin Yuan, who had been opposing Zhongzhe, take a few steps back and walk to the edge of the arena. Although he did not say it clearly, Lin Yuan's actions immediately made everyone understand his intentions. Lin Yuan was prepared to wait for Zhongzhe's heavenly scarlet fire to evolve before continuing the unfinished battle with Zhongzhe. Lin Yuan's actions not only made the younger generation of Yeyang Palace look at him in a different light, but even the majesties of Yeyang Palace looked at Lin Yuan differently. The fire in the fire fantasy country was still burning. At that moment, Lin Yuan, who had retreated to the edge of the arena with the sacred sword in hand, seemed to emit a beam of light that was brighter than the fire in the fire fantasy country. A dazzling beam of light. Standing at the edge of the arena, Lin Yuan swung the sacred sword in his hand twice, carving out 2 sword flowers. Zhongzhe's sacred source life form, the Heaven Scarlet Fire, would have a second ability when it evolved from its infancy stage to its growth stage. At that time, Zhongzhe's strength would definitely increase. If it was purely for the reward, Lin Yuan would have rushed forward at this time. If Zhongzhe was an enemy, Lin Yuan would not have hesitated to rush forward and use his fiercest moves. However, Zhongzhe, who was standing on the martial arena, was not an enemy, but an opponent. Even if they did not have a personal relationship, as Uncle Li and Auntie Zhang's junior brother, Zhongzhe was considered one of Lin Yuan's people. After a full 15 minutes, Zhongzhe's tightly shut eyes opened completely. When Zhongzhe opened his eyes, they had become the same red color as his palm. This red color was neither bloody nor evil. It had an incomparable dignity and majesty. However, Zhongzhe looked at Lin Yuan with a dignified gaze that was filled with gratitude. Just as Zhongzhe was about to raise his hand to signal Zhuo Ming to admit defeat, he saw Lin Yuan stride forward and stand opposite him. At the same time, Lin Yuan's clear voice sounded in Zhongzhe's ears. Zhongzhe, let's continue with the previous battle. I believe that if I had entered a state of epiphany, you would not have attacked me. When Zhongzhe heard that, he subconsciously thought that if Lin Yuan had entered a state of epiphany, he would not have attacked Lin Yuan. But even though he said that, that was not the case. However, Zhongzhe was not a bashful person. It was enough to keep some gratitude and favors in his heart. When something really happened, he would return the favor. That was what a man should do. Zhongzhe looked at Lin Yuan and said, yes. In that case, I'll unleash the strongest attack after the Crimson Heaven Flames transformation. With that, the scarlet color in Zhongzhe's palm completely covered the sky above the combat ring. The sky above the martial arena lit up with mysterious flame runes. These flame runes finally converged into a portal. At this moment, the crimson gate formed by the flame runes was slowly opening. While Zhongzhe was channeling the heaven scarlet fire with all his might, Lin Yuan was not idle. With a flick of his hand, a red energy element shot at the heaven-burning roar. This caused the burning sky centipede, who was fully activating the exclusive skill Fiery Fantasy Town, to enter a blissful and sluggish state. Immediately after, the red light pillar began to frantically extract the vitality from the burning sky centipede's body and pour it into Lin Yuan's vitality imprint. Chapter 882. In the face of the Diamond X/Fantasy V burning sky centipede, the Jasmine Lily's life force extraction could not cause serious damage in a short time. Lin Yuan did not want the Jasmine Lily to cause much damage to the burning sky centipede. Instead, he wanted the Jasmine Lily's reverse healing to control the burning sky centipede. The Jasmine Lily's reverse healing control effect was not a negative state. Instead, it put the body and mind in an extremely comfortable state. It was equivalent to a buff that eliminated fatigue. Therefore, phase would not have any resistance to it. After the red light landed on the burning sky centipede, the fire fantasy country that the burning sky centipede had been working hard to maintain immediately collapsed. Upon seeing the red light beam, everyone's memories seemed to be pulled back to the strange battle at the all-star match. Even though the fire fantasy country had dissipated under the Jasmine Lily's control, the temperature on the arena did not decrease. Instead, it rapidly increased. This temperature came from Zhongzhe's sacred source life form, the heaven scarlet fire, which had just entered the growth stage. Even so, Lin Yuan had achieved his goal. He wanted to destroy the fire fantasy country so that it could not enhance Zhongzhe's sacred source life form, the heaven scarlet fire. Lin Yuan gripped the sacred sword in his hand tightly and activated his strongest trump card. It was the Dark Death World's Sacred Sword Mode sword skill, Dark Crow Withering Strike. At that moment, red armored angels with a pair of flaming wings on their backs descended from the red portal formed by flame runes in the sky above Zhongzhe. According to Lin Yuan's senses, these flaming angels were all products of the fire element and were not real life forms. However, the gathering of the extremely dense fire element caused these angels to be filled with intelligence. After Zhongzhe sent the 21st flaming angel down from the red portal, his body immediately trembled. Zhongzhe had exhausted all the spiritual power in his body. Under Zhongzhe's command, the 21 flaming angels summoned from the red portal wielded a flaming battle blade and shield and flapped their wings as they charged toward Lin Yuan. While Zhongzhe was summoning the angels through the red portal, the half of the arena that Lin Yuan was at had been coated with a layer of darkness. Not only was this layer of darkness not dispelled by the raging crimson flames, but it was also continuously invading the area occupied by the crimson flames. At this time, Night Leaning Moon, who was sitting on the 13th chair in the inner palace of Yi Yang Palace, let out a soft cry of surprise. It's actually darkness-type power of darkness. As Night Leaning Moon spoke, the expressions of the other majesties had already changed. It was obvious that they had already sensed the power that the youth had displayed in the arena. However, the top and veteran factions leaders, including Elder Long Tu and elderly Yun Niaocan, looked at Lin Yuan in disbelief. Even if a 17 or 18-year-old youth was the Moon Empress disciple, he shouldn't be able to control power above the laws, right? Night Leaning Moon spoke again while the leaders of the veteran and peak forces were indescribably shocked. Although it's the Dark Attribute World's power, this power is only maintained at a certain level. In terms of power, it's only the power of a suzerain/myth 3-phase all-out attack. Looks like the outcome of the civil and martial duels is already clear. Night Leaning Moon's words caused the leaders of the veteran and peak powers to break out in a waterfall of sweat. The leaders of the veteran and peak factions could not help but shout in their hearts. Chief Guard, world power is already very impressive, right? It had to be known that a large portion of the leaders of the veteran and peak factions present had not reached the world level in terms of power. At that moment, Lin Yuan was like the ruler of the darkness in the arena, holding his sword elegantly in the darkness. Dark crows kept flying out from the tip of the sword. There were a total of 28 dark crows. These 28 dark crows circled and danced with Lin Yuan as the center. Every time the dark crows circled, their feet would land on the tip of the sacred sword in Lin Yuan's hand, seemingly waiting for him, the ruler of darkness, to give an order. Among the combat skills and movement techniques he had learned from the body-transcending memory grass, there were quite a number of sword skills. Lin Yuan swung his sword without any moves or tests, but he integrated the strengths of hundreds of schools of thought. When he swung his sword, a dark crow hit the flaming angel's body, forming a black withering mark. The 21 flaming angels were quite brave in battle, but Lin Yuan was not at a disadvantage when colliding with them with just one sword. Lin Yuan held the sacred sword and chanted softly. Sword skill, Dark Crow Withering Strike. As Lin Yuan chanted softly, the 28 dark crows returned to the tip of the sword and bloomed on it like a blooming flower. The 28 dark crows were like butterflies flying through flowers as they shuttled back and forth and collided with the 21 flaming angels. After 14 withering marks appeared on each flaming angel's body, it began to decay. The flaming angel's body, which was formed by flames, was like a withering flower of fire. As the dark crows shuttled back and forth, 56 withering marks appeared on one of the flaming angels. This flaming angel had entered a true withering state and fell from the sky onto the dark crystal ground. There was not a trace of the afterglow of flames in the withering and decaying body. As the first flaming angel fell to the ground, each of the 21 flaming angels entered a true withering state under the dark crow's attacks. Lin Yuan held the sacred sword and panted lightly. It could be said that in this battle with Zhongzhe, apart from the two myth-3 laws engraved on the Princess Luo Pao, Lin Yuan had already emptied himself. During the previous battle, the 28 dark crows that were hit by the dark crow withering strike would become more illusory with each collision. After defeating the 21 flaming angels, the 28 dark crows entered a translucent state. At this moment, the 28 illusory dark crows were flying around Zhongzhe, who had lost all of his spiritual power, flaunting Lin Yuan's victory. Just as Lin Yuan was about to signal the left palm minister, Zhuo Ming, he suddenly heard a deafening shout. It was unknown who was the first to shout, Lin Yuan. Then, his name resounded in the outer palace of Night Glory Palace. When he heard hundreds of voices shouting his name at the same time, Lin Yuan was slightly startled. When he turned around, he saw the sincere congratulations and astonishment in the eyes of these prodigies. When he saw these gazes, Lin Yuan knew that he had used his strength to conquer these proud and arrogant prodigies. He had used his strength to gain recognition and respect. However, Lin Yuan was not immersed in the cheers. Instead, he turned around and looked at the black crystal wall that was only one wall away from the inner palace of Yeyang Palace. A bright smile appeared on his face. Although Lin Yuan could not see the Moon Empress, his smile was for her. The previous 100 flower brocade pearls were his answer to the Moon Empress regarding their growth. He had also unleashed his combat ability to the extreme in today's civil and martial duels. It could be considered as giving the Moon Empress an answer sheet of his combat ability. Lin Yuan's lips parted slightly as he faced the pitch-black crystal wall and spoke silently. "Master, I won." Lin Yuan knew that his current actions were seen by the other majesties and might be interpreted as youthful insolence. However, he only wanted to convey the most direct joy in his heart to his master, the Moon Empress, who had always been watching over him. Immediately after, he lowered his head to look at the sacred sword in his hand and said softly to himself, "It's time for you to use it. Lin Yuan, you win." Chapter 883. When he said to himself, "Lin Yuan, you win," Lin Yuan revealed a nostalgic expression. Back then, when he had just supported the Fei store in the Xia region, it had been difficult for him to move a pot of usnia. It could be said that every time he buried energy ores in the usnia pot, Lin Yuan had gritted his teeth and persevered. Usnia that was not even a normal Fei was not very heavy, but its root system was very developed. In order for it to grow well, it needed a very large pot to be planted. A usnia pot with soil would weigh about 25 caddies. It was a huge burden for Lin Yuan, who could not even sense spirit qi at that time. Every time Lin Yuan carried a pot of usnia and placed it on the shelf, he would have to sit down and rest for a while. His days passed just like that. At that time, Lin Yuan's dream and longing was to maintain the small store and earn enough Federation dollars to help Chu Ci complete her studies. Lin Yuan did not intend to spend all the difficulties on Chu Ci's education for his younger sister, who came from the same mother. Even if Lin Yuan did not have the ability to obtain powerful Feis for Chu Ci by relying on a small Fei store, it was still possible to save some money and obtain a defense-type Fei suitable for team combat for Chu Ci. Who would have thought that the mediocre Lin Yuan would actually stand on the Nix Assembly's civil and martial ring 8 months later and win the championship, receiving cheers and applause? Lin Yuan felt that his journey was like a miracle. Even though there had been no lack of opportunities, Lin Yuan still had to thank his past self for his hard work. During these 8 months, Lin Yuan had almost never stopped to enjoy himself. As long as he was free, he would enhance Feis in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Mediocrity was not just mediocrity, but the pinnacle was not willing to be at the pinnacle. Lin Yuan was not a conceited person, but he still felt that he could no longer be described as mediocre. In short, no matter what, his original intention was still the same. 8 months was just the beginning, and it was just to give him more confidence to see this vast world. Just as Lin Yuan was reminiscing, he suddenly felt someone holding his arms and legs and lifting him up. Lin Yuan came back to his senses and looked down. He found that Lu Jia, Gao Feng, Long Tao, and Li Xian had already rushed to the arena. Before Lin Yuan could speak, he was thrown up by Lu Jia, Gao Feng, Long Tao, and Li Xian. Lin Yuan, who had mastered almost all the combat skills and martial arts moves in the world through the body transcending memory grass, only needed to flip over to land firmly on the ground. However, Lin Yuan did not do so. Instead, he smiled and enjoyed his friend's celebration. He felt his nerves, which had been taut from the battle, relax. Gu Lang saw Lu Jia, Gao Feng, Long Tao, and Li Xian running toward the arena, but he didn't follow them immediately. However, at this moment, Gu Lang still walked onto the stage. Gu Lang walked to Zhong Zai's side and looked at the calm Zhong Zai. You didn't lose unjustly. Even if you used the sacred source lifeform Heaven Scarlet Fire to unleash your ultimate move, you still wouldn't have a chance of winning. However, if Lin Yuan uses the last move he just used, you won't have any room to resist. Seniors Wu Ming will immediately protect you and announce that you have lost the match. Since the start of the fight, Zhong Zai's eyes had been on Lin Yuan and had never left him. Hearing Gu Lang's words, Zhong Zai immediately said, "I'm no match for him. I'm also very grateful to him. If it wasn't for him, my Heaven's Crimson Flame wouldn't have reached its growth stage. If I miss this opportunity, I wonder how long it will take for the Heaven Crimson Flame to evolve." Gu Lang was startled when he heard Zhong Zai's words. Having known Zhong Zai for more than a decade, Gu Lang knew how proud Zhong Zai was. Gu Lang didn't think that such a proud person like Zhong Zai would actually admit that he was inferior to someone of the same generation. Because of this battle, Zhong Zai's sacred source life form, the Heaven Scarlet Fire, evolved to the 4-star stage, and Zhong Zai's strength would increase the fastest. He could use resources to raise the Heaven Scarlet Fire's star level. During the battle just now, Gu Lang had keenly noticed that after Zhong Zai had summoned the sacred source life form, even if Lin Yuan had strong fire elemental resistance, he was still affected by the fire elemental energy. Lin Yuan had been relying on a large amount of vitality that came from an unknown source to hold on. This allowed him to maintain a delicate balance between the speed of his injuries and the speed of his recovery. If Zhongzai's Heaven Scarlet Fire star level was a little higher, Lin Yuan's fire elemental resistance and vitality would not be useful. Just as Gu Lang was about to comfort Zhongzai, he realized that Zhongzai had already run forward toward Lin Yuan. Gu Lang couldn't help but feel puzzled when he saw Zhongzai join Lu Jie, Gao Feng, Long Tao, and Li Xian. Previously, Zhongzai had taken the initiative to introduce him to Lin Yuan, which was already not in line with Zhongzai's style of doing things. Now, after this battle, how did Zhongzai and Lin Yuan's relationship become so good? At that moment, Sheng Yin looked at Lin Yuan, who had been thrown high in the arena, and sighed with a complicated expression. No matter what Lin Yuan's identity was, he now had a Radiance medal and was qualified to compete for a Radiance Envoy and the Radiance Light Knights. All these years, Sheng Yin had been working hard to become a member of the Radiance Light Knights. Sheng Yin understood that it was unrealistic for her to compete for a Radiance Envoy's position with pure healing abilities. However, now that Lin Yuan had obtained the Radiant Light Medal, it was tantamount to having one more powerful competitor. If Lin Yuan were to fight for the Radiance Envoy's position, one person would be squeezed out, thus increasing the pressure of the Radiance Light Knight Legion selection. If Lin Yuan could not become a Radiance Envoy, he would occupy another spot in the Radiance Light Knight Legion. There were still more than 2 years before the selection of the Radiance Envoys and Radiance Knights. However, based on the strength that Lin Yuan had just displayed, even if he remained stagnant in these 2 years, there was still no suspense for him to occupy a place in the Radiance Knights. Just when Sheng Yin was feeling pressured, Zhuang Qianhui, who was standing beside her, spoke. "Sister Sheng Yin, I've decided. Lin Yuan is my man from now on. When I get home, I'll ask my old man to propose marriage." Sheng Yin stared at Zhuang Qianhui with her mouth agape. She then said in a serious tone. "Qianhui. Some marriages aren't that easy to propose. Besides, where do you want your old man to go to propose to Lin Yuan?" Sheng Yin had always known that Zhuang Qianhui had been spoiled rotten by her family since she was young. Not only did she have a little princess syndrome, but she was also a little infatuated. However, Zhuang Qianhui wouldn't be so careless, right? Therefore, Sheng Yin planned to see if Zhuang Qianhui had guessed Lin Yuan's identity. Chapter 884. When Zhuang Qianhui heard Sheng Yin's words, the way she looked at Sheng Yin immediately became vigilant. "Sister Sheng Yin, I remember that you like Lord Zhongzai. You can't fall in love with someone else so quickly. Lin Yuan is mine. It doesn't matter if I don't know where to ask my old man to propose. Big brother Li Xian seems to be on such good terms with Lin Yuan. You should know where Lin Yuan is staying, right? I'll just ask brother Li Xian when the time comes." Upon hearing Zhuang Qianhui's words, Sheng Yin sighed softly. Zhuang Qianhui was a direct descendant of a top-notch faction, and it was impossible for him not to have heard of the Moon Empress disciple participating in the Nix assembly. It seemed like Zhuang Qianhui was really infatuated with Lin Yuan. The Nix assembly's official meeting was about to begin, and if Lin Yuan was really the Moon Empress disciple, he would definitely reveal his identity. Once Lin Yuan's identity was revealed, no matter how much Zhuang Qianhui was favored in the family, she wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Old Master Zhuang did not dare to ascend the Leaning Moon Mountain to be a matchmaker for Lin Yuan and Zhuang Qianhui. It seemed like Zhuang Qianhui was destined to have a one-sided love. The Moon Empress, who was sitting on the throne 13, saw Lin Yuan smile through the black crystal wall and the silent words "Master, I won." She suddenly felt a surge of warmth in her heart. This warm current flowed from her heart to her eyes, causing them to moisten. The Moon Empress hurriedly closed her eyes and took a full minute to suppress her emotions. This scene was naturally seen by the other 11 majesties who were preparing to congratulate the Moon Empress. The 11 High Lords were stunned. Apart from the incident 10 years ago, they had never seen the Moon Empress so emotional. The Moon Empress had always been a cold person, and it seemed like Lin Yuan's weight in her heart was truly immeasurable. However, His Majesty, who had also accepted a disciple, felt that the Moon Empress' reaction was very normal. Even if his disciple won the championship of the civil and martial arena, he would also feel honored. A minute later, the Moon Empress opened her eyes. She remembered that the first time her eyes had turned red was when the old man had died. At that time, the Moon Empress felt that she wouldn't have a second chance in her life to cry, but she didn't expect that she would inadvertently break her vow. When the Moon Empress saw Lin Yuan being tossed on the stage, she couldn't hold back her smile. The Moon Empress said to Mystic Moon, who was standing behind her. Mystic Moon, Lin Yuan's clothes aren't easy to wear. Go and help him. Then, send this thing to Lin Yuan and let him eat it to recover from his injuries in battle. After speaking, the Moon Empress handed a brocade box to Mystic Moon. Xian Yu took the brocade box, nodded and left the inner palace. Mystic Moon also felt that she should go and take a look at Lin Yuan. Otherwise, after the Moon Empress removed the crown pattern, it would be hard for Lin Yuan to wear the moonlight crown robe. After all, there were more than 300 accessories in the moonlight royal robe. If Lin Yuan were to figure out where to put these accessories, he would not be able to finish wearing the moonlight regalia by the next morning. At first, when Lu Jia, Gao Feng, Long Tao, and Li Xian threw him into the sky, he felt fine. However, Gao Feng's hands were really strong. If he hadn't used his body technique to adjust his balance, he would have been flipped over in 2 moves. Now that Zhong Zhe had joined the quartet, Lin Yuan was surprised to find that Zhong Zhe's hands were even stronger than Gao Feng's. Lin Yuan looked at Zhong Zhe suspiciously. Zhong Zhe couldn't be looking for revenge after losing to me in the arena, right? Lin Yuan felt that he was like a cake that was being hammered by Gao Feng and Zhong Zhe, who were constantly moving up and down in the air. When Lin Yuan realized that his butt was being hammered, he couldn't hold it in anymore. He quickly exerted force in midair and landed gracefully on the ground. After standing on the ground and chatting with everyone, Lin Yuan took out his cell phone from the diamond face storage box. At that moment, Lin Yuan realized that there were 2 missed calls on his cell phone, and they were both from Mystic Moon. Lin Yuan quickly called Mystic Moon. Lin Yuan immediately knew why Mystic Moon was looking for him, so he turned to Lu Jia and said, "All right." He turned to Lu Jia and said, "We should go to the Night Language Pavilion to change." Mystic Moon had said that she would wait for him at the Night Language Pavilion. This was Lin Yuan's first time at the Night Language Pavilion, so he naturally didn't know where it was. However, as the young palatial lord of the Night Language Pavilion, Lu Jia should know where it was. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Lu Jia nodded. "Let Uncle Wright take us there in a while." Lin Yuan chatted with everyone for a while and arranged to meet again at the Nix Assembly's main meeting. Then, he and Lu Jia went to the right palm official, Yu Zhe. Everyone in this small group knew Lin Yuan's and Lu Jia's identities, although they did not know what Lin Yuan meant when he said to change clothes. Although they didn't know what Lin Yuan meant by changing clothes, it should be related to the Nix Assembly's main meeting that was about to begin. When Yu Zhe saw Lin Yuan and Lu Jia walking in front of him, he said before Lin Yuan and Lu Jia could speak, "Mystic Moon called me just now." "Xian Yu just called me. Let's go to the night pavilion together." After speaking to Lin Yuan, Yu Zhe turned to Lu Jia and said, "Young palatial lord, there is still an hour left before the main meeting begins. Let me help you put on Yi Chei's regal robe later." "Young palatial lord, there is still an hour left before the main meeting begins." Lu Jia was about to refuse when he recalled the accessories he saw when he opened the brocade box in the Return from Faraway Manor. Lu Jie hurriedly gave up on the idea of wearing Yi Chei's imperial robes. Uncle Yu, I'll have to trouble you later. He followed Wuxia all the way to the Night Language Pavilion and saw Mystic Moon standing at the entrance of the Night Language Pavilion from afar. When Mystic Moon saw Lin Yuan, she quickly walked over and greeted him. Young Lord, the Moon Empress asked me to give this to you. She said that it will allow you to recover from the injuries you suffered in the previous battle. As one of the Moon Empress' 2 Moon envoys, Mystic Moon also felt honored that Lin Yuan was the champion of both the civil and martial arena. When Mystic Moon handed the brocade box to Lin Yuan, she congratulated him. Your Highness, congratulations on becoming the champion of both the civil and martial arena. When the Moon Empress was having a question-and-answer session with Lin Yuan, Mystic Moon was not by her side, so he was not sure to what extent the Moon Empress had taught Lin Yuan. However, in Mystic Moon's opinion, it was normal for Lin Yuan, the Radiant Moon Palace's young lord, to be strong. However, Mystic Moon still marveled at Lin Yuan's growth speed more than once. Lin Yuan received the brocade box from Mystic Moon and smiled. Thank you, Uncle Mystic. After speaking, he opened the brocade box that the Moon Empress had asked Mystic Moon to hand to him. There was a brownish-black pill in the brocade box. When Lin Yuan opened the brocade box, he smelled an extremely rich medicinal fragrance. When Lin Yuan inhaled the medicinal fragrance, he immediately felt that his entire body, including his soul, was receiving comprehensive care. Chapter 885. As Mystic Moon did not check the contents of the brocade box, he did not know what the Moon Empress wanted him to hand over to Lin Yuan. Xian Yu couldn't help but start coughing. The Moon Empress really doted on the young lord as usual. His Highness had indeed lost a lot of vitality in the civil and martial arena, but that boundless vitality was obviously one of his trump cards. Even though he was hungry after using it, His Highness did not seem to be affected by it. However, the Moon Empress had actually taken out a Moon Dew rejuvenation elixir that could immediately revive a person as long as they were still breathing. It didn't matter if one's vitality was exhausted or if one's soul was shattered. It was just so that the young lord could recover from the injuries he had suffered in the previous battle. This was simply too exaggerated. However, such exaggerated doting had always been the Moon Empress style toward the young highness. The right paragon, Wuxia, looked at the Moon Dew rejuvenation pill in Lin Yuan's hand and swallowed his saliva. The Moon Dew recovery pill was one of the Moon Empress signature products, and only the Moon Empress had it in the entire world. It was rumored that the Moon Dew Life Recovery Elixir was made with a large number of creation species plant-type phase spiritual ingredients, and the Moon Empress contracted holy weeping moon beast's tears. Even if Chef Supreme and Bamboo Monarch were Class 5 creation masters, without the Moon Dew Revival Elixir's formula and the holy weeping moon beast's tears, they would not be able to create the Moon Dew Revival Elixir. Now, even the chief guard had to personally go to the Radiant Moon Palace to obtain the Moon Dew rejuvenation pill, but the Moon Empress had casually given it to Lin Yuan to recover from his injuries. This was too extravagant. Wuxia had already checked on Lin Yuan's injuries when leading the way just now. Wuxia was also afraid that Lin Yuan had suffered some internal injuries in the combat arena. However, after some investigation, Wuxia found that Lin Yuan's body was simply stronger than an ox. There wasn't even a trace of impurity in his body. With one look, one could tell that he was a man who had been soaking in a jar of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar. Although he did not know what the pill in the brocade box was, True Data had already probed its effects. Lin Yuan didn't want to waste such a precious elixir. Moreover, there were no injuries on his body that required such an effective elixir to recover. Lin Yuan quickly said to Mystic Moon, "Uncle Xian, I'll keep this pill first. I still haven't finished the jujube powder that Master ground for me with the smooth crystal silk jujube." Upon hearing that, Mystic Moon nodded and did not insist on Lin Yuan eating the Moon Dew rejuvenation pill now. In Mystic Moon's opinion, it would not be too late for Lin Yuan to eat the Lunar Dew Life Recovery Pill when he really needed it in the future. After putting away the brocade box containing the Lunar Dew Revival Pills, he took out the box containing the Lunar Regalia. When he opened the box again and saw the Moonlight Royal Robe, he couldn't help but sigh at its beauty. Mystic Moon hurriedly took the box that contained the Moonlight Royal Robe and said, "All right. Your Highness, take off your spirit chi clothes first. You only have an hour to wear the Moonlight Royal Robe, so you don't have much time." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan quickly took off his spirit chi clothes. Anyway, everyone here was a man, and there was nothing to be shy about. Mystic Moon immediately helped Lin Yuan put on the Moonlight Crown Robe. Just like Mystic Moon and Lin Yuan, Wuxia also helped Lu Jie put on Yi Chei's royal robe. Compared to the Moonlight Imperial Robe, Yi Chei's Imperial Robe wasn't any less complicated, and it was just as difficult to wear. However, Mystic Moon and Wuxia were very familiar with it. When Mystic Moon helped him put on the Moonlight Royal Robe, Lin Yuan used his hand to gently touch the layer of apricot flower patterns on the collar. After touching it, Lin Yuan found that this layer of apricot flower patterns was not embroidered. It was like petals of apricot flowers growing on the Moonlight Royal Robe. When he touched it, the layer of apricot flower petals still had the toughness of fresh plant petals, which made Lin Yuan rather curious. Mystic Moon watched Lin Yuan use his hand to touch the layers of apricot flower patterns on the Moonlight Royal Robe's collar and said with a smile, "Your Highness, these petals you touched came from a creation seed apricot fay." "Your Highness, the petals you touched came from a creation seed apricot fay." However, when other accessories are worn later, this layer of apricot flower petals will not be obvious. The radiant pearl collar will cover this layer of apricot flower patterns. The petals on this creation seed apricot fay are only subclass spiritual materials for the base of the Moonlight Royal Robe. It is to use the beauty of the apricot flower's heavenly shadow to set off the radiant pearl's brilliance. Otherwise, these apricot flower petals are not qualified to appear on the Moonlight Royal Robe. Upon hearing Mystic Moon's words, Lin Yuan secretly clicked his tongue and felt that the Moonlight Royal Robe had suddenly become heavy. Lin Yuan did not dare to imagine how much radiance dollars he was wearing it. Among flower species fays, the flowers could be said to be the most precious part of them. It was only a matter of whether or not the creation seed's petals were used as materials to decorate the Moonlight Royal Robe. This extravagance was truly unimaginable. Lin Yuan finally understood why he could not find any clues when using Morbius True Data to check this Moonlight Royal Robe. Morbius had not become a fantasy breed and was still unable to examine things at the creation seed level. It was just like how Lin Yuan could only detect the effects of the Lunar Dew Rejuvenation Pill and not what spiritual ingredients had been used. As for what the radiant pearl that Mystic Moon was talking about, Lin Yuan did not know. It seemed that the radiant pearl was not something that he could come into contact with at his current level. At that moment, the veteran factions and the top factions management generation in the Night Peak Palace were eagerly waiting for the Nyx assembly to begin. At the same time, they were also listening intently to the conversation between the 13 High Lords, not daring to make the slightest sound. Elder Time, who had not said a word since the beginning, suddenly spoke to the other 12 High Lords. "Have you heard that the Azure Federation has confirmed the news of the 4th Azure Envoy among the 5 Azure Envoys?" Upon hearing Elder Time's words, the Moon Empress, Night Leaning Moon, Bamboo Monarch, Chef Supreme, and the others frowned slightly. Obviously, they had not heard the news of the Azure Federation confirming the 4th Azure Envoy. However, since Old Man Time had spoken, his words had to be absolutely true, so there was no way he would lie. The Azure Federation and the Radiance Federation were both one of the 3 major federations, and there was a Radiance Blue route between them. There was a lot of material exchange between the 2 federations. Therefore, the news about the 4th Azure Envoy could really be considered big news. The neutral and calm voice on the phone sounded again. Elder Time, don't keep us in suspense. You just went to the Azure Federation not long ago, so you naturally know more about it than we do. Upon hearing that, Elder Time hurriedly said, clearly very respectful to that neutral and calm voice. 10 days ago, one of the 12 5-star Azure families of the Azure Federation awakened 2 beast tattoos at the same time in the younger generation. One of the beast tattoos was from the 5-star Azure family, and the other came from a 4-star family. It is said that the 4th Azure envoy was previously a woman who was ill. After listening to Elder Time, the neutral and calm voice said, 2 beast patterns perfectly expressed in a person's body without conflict. It's really strange that 2 beast patterns are perfectly expressed in a person's body without conflict. There are really more and more interesting young people. It just so happens that we can announce the news of the Class 6-dimensional rift in a while. As soon as the neutral and calm voice fell, the eyes of the veteran factions and the top factions management generation immediately revealed extreme ecstasy. Chapter 886. As the leaders of the veteran factions and pinnacle factions, they were always thinking about how to develop their clan better and obtain more resources. A clan's military strength, operations, and expansion all required resources to support it. Therefore, apart from the veteran factions and pinnacle factions leaders who had the opportunity to become Radiance envoys or members of the Radiance Light Knights, the news of the Azure Federation's 4th Azure envoy had been confirmed. The rest of the people treated it as a piece of news. However, the news of a Class 6-dimensional rift caused the hearts of all the veteran factions and pinnacle factions leaders to beat violently. If Class 1 to Class 5-dimensional rifts were used by dimensional lifeforms to attack the main world, then Spirit Chi professionals could enter the dimensional rift after killing the dimensional lifeforms that surged out. They could search for resources in the dimensional rift and obtain source-type items or even sacred source lifeforms from the dimensional hub. Class 6-dimensional rifts could be defined as the main world's invasion of the dimensional world. After Class 6-dimensional rifts appeared, there wouldn't be as many dimensional lifeforms as Class 1 to Class 5-dimensional rifts. However, the strength of the dimensional lifeforms that surged out was uncertain. Class 6-dimensional rifts were connected to the entire dimensional world. After a Class 6-dimensional rift opened, there would be a dimensional membrane inside the rift. Due to this dimensional membrane, the dimensional lifeforms in the dimensional world wouldn't feel the dimensional rift suction force and wouldn't be able to see the dimensional rift. However, if they were to accidentally step into the dimensional rift, they would still be teleported to the main world. The strength of the lifeforms in the dimensional world wasn't fixed. There might be Class 1-dimensional lifeforms that were equivalent to Bronze phase or Class 10-dimensional lifeforms that were equivalent to Creation Breed phase. There was once a Class 6-dimensional rift in the Radiance Federation that was connected to the Abyss world. When the Class 6-dimensional rift opened, there happened to be 2 Class 10 demons that were equivalent to Creation Breed phase fighting. Fortunately, the Class 6-dimensional rift that connected to the Abyss world opened in the desolate Scorching Sun Desert. The Scorching Sun Desert was tens of thousands of kilometers away from the nearest inhabited city, Rolling Rock City. However, the battle between the 2 Class 10 demons still affected Rolling Rock City, which was tens of thousands of kilometers away. It even affected the Scorching Sun Desert's terrain. This caused the temperature of the Scorching Desert to soar. The entire central region was roasted into flowing lava. In the end, the Spirit Guard's chief guard Yi had personally arrived and taken in the 2 Class 10 demons that were equivalent to Creation Breed phase. Subsequently, Chief Guard Knight dispatched 20 envoys to seal the Class 6-dimensional rift while Chief Guard Knight personally led a team into the Abyss world. After killing all the demons within thousands of kilometers of the Abyss world's Class 6-dimensional rift, he ordered 20 guard envoys to station themselves within the Class 6-dimensional rift. They would prevent the abyssal demons from invading the origin world from the inside. Risks often coexisted with benefits. Class 6-dimensional rifts might be accompanied by unpredictable dangers, but compared to the rewards, these risks were nothing. A dimensional world connected to a Class 6-dimensional rift was a huge treasure trove. The resources in a dimensional world were far more abundant than those in the abyss-dimensional rifts. If one could go through a Class 6-dimensional rift to harvest resources in a dimensional world, it would be much easier. That way, he would be able to earn a lot of money very quickly, allowing his faction to develop to a higher level. Due to the special characteristics of Class 6-dimensional rifts, their existence was like a second world that was connected to the Radiance continent. One could establish a faction through the Class 6-dimensional rift and develop in the dimensional world. The Origin Worlds faction and the Dimensional Rifts faction would form a connection and continuously move the dimensional world's resources into the Origin World. Of course, in order to do so, one must have sufficient strength to support it. Furthermore, this Class 6-dimensional rift was an abyss-dimensional rift, and the abyssal demon strength was not to be trifled with. Since the Class 6 abyss-dimensional rift was connected to the entire dimensional world, if a Class 6 abyss-dimensional rift was opened in the Federation of Other Continents, other Federation experts would also be able to enter the Abyss world through the Class 6 abyss-dimensional rift. It could be said that the Class 6-dimensional rift had given the various major federations a chance to compete for hegemony on the same stage. The veteran factions and the pinnacle factions management generation started to get excited. Based on Her Majesty's words, could it be that the Class 6 abyss-dimensional rift in the rock flow desert that had been sealed for nearly a decade was going to be open to the public? If that was the case, it was simply great news. Zhuo Ming, the left administrator, arrived at the inner palace of Night Dawn Palace. He quickly walked to Night Leaning Moon's ear and whispered a few words before standing behind her with his hands behind his back. At that moment, the Night Dawn Palace's bell rang again. Upon hearing the bell, Night Leaning Moon stood up and said, "It's time for the Nyx Assembly's official meeting." It's time for the Nyx Assembly's official meeting. Let's get ready to start the official meeting. As soon as Night Leaning Moon's voice fell, the spiritual power in her body suddenly circulated. The tide-like spiritual power poured into the dark crystal floor of Night Dawn Palace's inner palace. At the same time, an aura that was like the eternal night gushed out of Night Leaning Moon's body. Immediately after, the veteran factions management generation and the pinnacle factions management generation, as well as the outer palace's youth generation, suddenly realized that the walls and floor were rapidly changing shape as they were disassembled and pieced together. The entire Night Dawn Palace was like a mechanical palace that was being disassembled and pieced together. In just a moment, the outer palace and inner palace of Night Dawn Palace had fused together to form a giant auditorium. 13 chairs were placed around the auditorium, encircling the entire auditorium. Behind each chair, there were a few more seats. These seats were slightly shorter than the 13 chairs. The number of seats behind each chair was different. Some had more, some had fewer, and some didn't even have seats behind them. It was obvious that the number of seats had been carefully chosen. Many chairs had also appeared in the auditorium center. These chairs were slightly shorter than the seats behind the 13 chairs. There was a gap behind each chair, which was just enough for 1 or 2 people to stand in. In front of these chairs was a huge ceremonial platform. The design of the ceremonial platform was simple and crude, and it was completely inlaid with law crystals. The entire auditorium was burning with the top-notch exceptional flame, sun-sacred flame. The changes in Night Dawn Palace's outer palace stunned the veteran factions management generation and the pinnacle factions management generation and the younger generation. The first was even more shocking. End of this chapter. Chapter 887. The Bamboo Monarch looked at the auditorium that was formed by the fusion of the outer and inner palaces. Qingyue, your ingenuity as a 5-star spirit craftsman is truly superb. Every time I see you, I want to invite you to my purple bamboo forest to transform my Xiangzhu pavilion. Night Leaning Moon glanced at the bamboo monarch with a strange expression. Isn't your residence in the purple bamboo forest called Purple Bamboo Pavilion? When did it change its name to Xiangzhu Pavilion? The bamboo monarch coughed and could not help but curse in his heart. With Night Leaning Moon's EQ, it's no wonder the Moon Empress didn't choose her as one of the Moon Envoys. She's just showing off her love and ingratiating herself with the beauty standing behind her. Night Leaning Moon can't even see this. Of course, the bamboo monarch would not say this out loud. If he did, he was afraid that Night Leaning Moon would immediately attack him. At that moment, those veteran factions and pinnacle factions management generation standing behind Night Leaning Moon suddenly realized that Chief Guard Yi was actually a Class 5 spirit craftsman. This was the first time they had heard of this news. There were far more Class 5 spirit craftsmen in the Radiance Federation than Class 5 creation masters. After a rough calculation, there should be at least 100 pinnacle Class 4 creation masters. They had also looked for Class 5 creation masters to help them produce items. However, ordinary Class 5 spirit craftsmen definitely did not have the ability to use ingenious means to build the entire palace like Chief Guard Yi. Spirit craftsmen were the same as creation masters. After reaching Class 5, there were no grades. However, just by looking at this Night Independence Palace, it was obvious that Chief Guard Yi's spirit craftsman strength was definitely far superior to ordinary Class 5 spirit craftsmen. At that moment, the aura that was like the eternal night suddenly shrank, and the majestic aura was withdrawn into Night Leaning Moon's body. At that moment, a mark appeared on the back of the 13 chairs, including those placed in the center of the auditorium. The mark on the 13 chairs was the crown pattern of the 13 majesties, while the mark on the back of the seats in the center area represented the various veteran factions and pinnacle factions' family imprints. As the organizer of the Nyx Assembly, Night Leaning Moon appeared on the stage in a flash and said in a cold voice, "Everyone, the Nyx Assembly's main meeting has begun. Everyone, the main meeting of the Nyx Assembly has begun. Take your seats." After saying that, Night Leaning Moon flashed to her seat again. Cicada Cry first placed the phone in his hand on the chair it belonged to, and then returned to his own chair in a flash. As the 13 majesties took their seats, the leaders of the veteran forces and the top forces also took their seats according to the marks on the back of the chairs in the central area. The younger generation came to stand behind their elders. Zhong Zhe, Gu Lang, Li Zhonglin, Zhang Yingying, Xia Chen, Wang Fuxiang, and the others sat on the seats reserved for them. It didn't take long for him to finish sitting down. Zhang Yu, the left minister, and Zhuo Ming stood behind the chairs, standing ramrod straight like guards. At this moment, the leaders of the peak and veteran forces, as well as the youngsters standing behind their elders, keenly noticed that the seats reserved behind the other high lords were already occupied. Only the seats behind Chief Guard Yi and the Moon Empress were empty. At that moment, only Lu Jie, who had just won the martial duel championship, and Lin Yuan, who had won the civil and martial duel championship, were not present in the entire Nyx Assembly. This made many people who had guessed Lin Yuan's identity confirm his identity. It also made those who didn't know Lin Yuan's identity suddenly have a shocking guess. At this moment, 4 people walked out from the only corridor in the entire auditorium. When they saw these 4 people, not only were the leaders of the veteran forces and the top forces stunned, but even the 11 majesties apart from the Moon Empress and Chief Guard Yi were also stunned. Their eyes scanned the Moon Empress and Night Leaning Moon, as well as a youth walking at the front of the corridor. At that moment, a voice suddenly echoed in the central area. "Damn, why is Lin Yuan wearing the majesties?" The majesties. Before Gao Feng could finish speaking, he immediately realized that he had said something wrong. Gao Feng secretly glanced forward and found that his father was indeed glaring at him. Gao Pei's glare immediately made Gao Feng shiver. However, Gao Feng immediately noticed that the corners of his father's mouth were curling up from time to time, and his cheeks were also twitching slightly. It was as though his face was stiff from smiling. Gao Feng thought to himself. Why is my father's expression so strange? Gao Feng was just about to ask his father what was wrong when he realized that he was being lifted up by a ball of gentle spiritual power that was like a cool breeze. By the time Gao Feng came back to his senses, he found himself standing in front of a man with eyes full of smiles. This man was wearing a simple and elegant green majesties that were covered with a thin layer of cicada wing patterns. The cicada wing patterns overlapped and had an indescribable elegance. The two sides of the majesties were woven with an unknown crystalline silk thread to form two towering giant trees. The giant trees were embroidered with silver silk beads and a few cicadas. Just looking at these cicadas, Gao Feng felt his heart suddenly calm down, and his ears seemed to be ringing with the clear chirping of Zen insects. However, Gao Feng immediately reacted. Wasn't this person in front of him one of the 13 majesties who stayed in the imperial court for a long time, His Majesty Cicada Cry? Gao Feng was shocked and didn't know why His Majesty Cicada Cry called him in front of him. Could it be that His Majesty Cicada Cry was unhappy because of his careless mouth? Was His Majesty Cicada Cry going to personally punish him? Gao Feng remembered his father saying that among the 13 majesties, His Majesty Cicada Cry was always smiling and looked the easiest to approach. However, in reality, His Majesty Cicada Cry was the most difficult to approach among the 13 majesties. The 13 majesties always had their own responsibilities. For example, Bureau Chief Yi was in charge of the Spirit Guard, and Spacetime Elder was in charge of Ostrich Logistics. Every majesty had a special right and a specific duty. His Majesty Cicada Cry's responsibility was to be the city lord of the 36 big cities in the imperial court. It could be said that the city lords of the 36 big cities were His Majesty Cicada Cry's subordinates. One word from His Majesty Cicada Cry could decide the appointment or dismissal of the city lords. Moreover, the veteran forces and top forces were deeply rooted in the 36 major cities. Therefore, no veteran or top force dared to not respect His Majesty Cicada Cry, who indirectly ruled the 36 big cities. Just as Gao Feng was feeling nervous, he heard His Majesty Cicada Cry in front of him speak softly. "Little guy, I know you're called Gao Feng. Don't be nervous." Then, Gao Feng saw His Majesty Cicada Cry in front of him stand up and speak to Bureau Chief Yi in a clear voice. "Bureau Chief Yi, give this seat to this seat's disciple. Your disciples are all sitting, I can't let this seat's disciple stand." The second was even more. End of this chapter. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.